Chapter 209. 3 days later, Chuli stood in front of a vast lake and looked at it. The mirror-like surface of the lake met the blue sky and white clouds. It was like two mirrors folded together, flat and empty. There was nothing else. He knew that Tai Hua Valley was on this lake. However, there was nothing on the lake. Could it be that Tai Hua Valley was located under the lake? He immediately denied this idea. Mei Ao Shuang's intuition was better than others. She could feel it as soon as he got close. That was why he did not go near anymore. He could come here directly because he saw this lake in Hebing Hua's mind and knew where Tai Hua Valley was. The Tai Hua Valley he saw in Hebing Hua's mind was a waterside pavilion. It was on the lake, not at the bottom. This was strange. It could be hidden on the lake and could not be seen. Could it be a formation? He thought of the heavens outskirts that he had been studying recently. He could only study it for 2 hours a day. After 2 hours, Xue Ling would come out and disturb him. She would talk about all sorts of things. First, she would talk about things in the public house, then talk about things in the martial arts world, then talk about things in the city. She had been learning how to dance from Lu. Lu came to the public house every day. Lu heard a lot of news in the New Moon brothel. She told her, when she had nothing to do. She told Chuli about it. This was exactly what Chuli wanted. He asked Lu to teach her how to dance. He wanted Lu to be his eyes and ears. The startling Cloud Association was powerful and well-informed. However, it was only 1 or 2 cities. Most of the people they dealt with were people from the martial arts world. The New Moon brothel was different. The people who came to the New Moon brothel were either rich or noble. They were talking about the court or the battles between the city guards and the governor. He stared at the lakeside for a while, but he could not sense Chun Ying's presence. So, he decided to settle down in the woods by the lakeside. The aura from all directions flowed into his body, nourishing his body. It was the perfect time for him to calm down and study the formation of Tian Yen Go Chun. Tai Hua Valley on the tranquil surface of the lake, numerous pavilions and waterside pavilions dotted the landscape. The middle was connected by a bridge. A gust of wind blew, and the lake rippled. Son Li Hua brought Chuning to a waterside pavilion. She pointed to the plaque on the forehead. This starry night waterside pavilion is yours. Chuning looked at the waterside pavilion. The windows were open on all sides, and the white gauze curtains hung low. When a gust of wind blew, the curtains fluttered. It was truly poetic and picturesque. It was too beautiful to behold. Thank you, Senior Sister Sunday. You don't have to be so polite. We'll be a family from now on. Son Li Hua pulled her into the waterside pavilion and said with a smile, if you want anything, just tell me. You won't be able to leave the valley for the next 3 years. You're quite pitiful. Chuning smiled. Not bad. Young Master Chu sure is cautious. Son Li Hua smiled and said, all right, you should rest now. I'll come and find you for dinner tonight. After dinner, we'll watch the martial arts competition. He Shiji and Zhu Shiji are going to compete. Why must we compete? To fight for a Tai Hua golden pill. Son Li Hua said, this time, senior apprentice sister, he will be going out of the valley together. Sorry for the delay. Senior Sister Zhu has been waiting anxiously. Tai Hua golden pill. This is a miraculous medicine from our valley. No matter how serious your injuries are, you'll recover immediately after taking one. If you're not injured, it will strengthen your physique. It's equivalent to several years of cultivation. Why would they compete? Every month, the valley leader will take out a golden pill and then draw lots to choose 20 people to compete for this golden pill. Sun Liwa shook her head. I'm unlucky. Last month, I was chosen and lost to Senior Huang. Chun Ying's eyes turned and quickly thought of this method. She smiled and said, What if you don't get chosen? If you get chosen twice, you can't do it again this year. If you don't get chosen, you can still compete in the last month. Sun Lihua said, anyway, everyone has a chance. It all depends on your luck and martial arts. For example, Senior Apprentice Sister, he was unlucky this time. Senior Apprentice Sister Zhu is very powerful. I see. Junior Apprentice Chen, you can participate next month. My martial arts is weak. It's useless even if I get chosen. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll get chosen with low martial arts. Chuning shook her head and laughed. Sun Lihua chatted with her for a while and then left. Chun Ying went in and out of the waterside pavilion. She looked at it carefully and was very satisfied. She was not used to living here alone. She was used to living with everyone in the Chu clan. Although there were some small conflicts from time to time, someone would quickly mediate. Now that she was living alone in a house, it was a little lonely and quiet. She needed some time to get used to it. There were 3 rooms in the waterside pavilion: the living room in the middle, the bedroom in the east, and the study in the west. She went to the bedroom and opened the bundle on the couch. A purple box was revealed. She carefully opened the box. Inside were 2 jade bottles and a stack of paper. The paper was painted with strange blood-red symbols. She was startled. She quickly picked up the letter, closed the purple box, and read it carefully. In the letter, Chu Li explained the usage of these talismans. The 2 bottles contained 2 Taihua gold pills and 2 spirit blessing pills. The purple box had a special ability. It could isolate the spiritual energy from heaven and earth. The blood talismans were suppressed and would not dissipate. She could take one out when she needed it. One talisman could last for 2 days and help her speed up her cultivation. After using these, he would find a way to send more. The moment Chun Ying opened the purple box, Chu Li, who was sitting in the woods by the lake, suddenly knew the location of Taihua Valley. He had already made a boat and was waiting for this moment. He jumped onto the boat, and the boat shot out like an arrow. In a short while, it had traveled more than 20 miles and slowly stopped. Chu Li stood at the bow of the boat. He looked surprised and stared at the empty lake. According to his senses, Taihua Valley was not far ahead. However, once the boat got close, it would inexplicably go past that place and could not get closer. It was a formation. He did not expect Taihua Valley to be shrouded in a formation. If he wanted to enter Taihua Valley, he had to first break the formation. If he could understand the formation, he could enter Taihua Valley quietly and not be discovered by Mei Ao Shuang. It seemed that Taihua Valley also had a foundation. Formations were not something that any faction could come into contact with. He drove the boat back to the shore and rushed all the way back to the house of High Duke. As soon as he returned to the Gloriesville courtyard, he heard from Xueling that Master Xiao Taiying had returned. At the same time, the messenger from the imperial residence of King and had also arrived. It was very lively. Chu Li did not care about these. He only used up 8 bottles of beast blood in one go and drew more than 200 blood talismans. During this period, he used more than 10 blood talismans. He was so tired that he was dizzy. The replenishment of the blood talismans was not as fast as his consumption. The next day, Su Ru brought the sky overflowing godly star. He sat in the pagoda and looked at it. After a while, it suddenly disappeared. Su Ru's eyes widened. She blinked and turned to look at Xueling. Xueling also widened her eyes in shock. He is. Su Ru stuttered and said, "What is he doing?" Xueling blinked her eyes and smiled. Master might be joking. He is cheating. Su Ru completely reacted and angrily said, "This is too much." "Chief, Master knows what he is doing. Don't worry, don't worry. Xue Ling quickly pulled her hand. Wait and see. Master will come back. All right, then let's wait for him. Su Ru hesitated and scoffed. Let's see what he is going to do. Chu Li brought the sky overflowing godly star to the forest outside the heavens wolf formation. He took out more than 50 blood talismans and began to study the formation. Studying the sky overflowing godly star was no different from the academic research of the future. It was extremely taxing on the brain. The blood talismans played a huge role at this time and replenished his huge consumption. Chapter 2:10. Previously, he had been studying the heavens expanse Go-Chin bit by bit, 1 or 2 pages a day for 2 hours each time because he wasn't in a hurry. He studied formations for the sake of the Autumn Temple. He came from the Temple of Autumn, and it would be easy for those with ulterior motives to find out that they could not deal with him. To vent their anger, they would deal with the Temple of Autumn. The disciples of the Temple of Autumn specialized in Buddhism and did not know martial arts, so they could not withstand a blow from a martial arts master. He did not want anything to happen to the disciples of the Temple of Autumn, but he could not let a grandmaster stay there all the time, so he thought that the best way was to use a formation. He was proud of his knowledge from his past life and his intelligence in this life. Now that he had mastered the omniscient mirror, it would not be a problem for him to set up a formation. Previously, he was not in a hurry to study it. Firstly, haste makes waste. Secondly, the public house had already sent a grandmaster to guard the Temple of Autumn. Thirdly, his current enemies would not attack the Temple of Autumn. The Tempest Temple would not dare, and the Rin public house would not dare. Chu Li's light body technique was peerless. If the Tempest Temple dared to hurt the people from the Autumn Temple, Chu Li would retaliate crazily. The disciples of the Tempest Temple would not be able to defend themselves. The same went for the Rin public house. Before they had the confidence to kill him, they would not dare to act recklessly. If they wanted to kill someone, they would kill him first. Ever since he saw the Tai Hua Valley's array formation, it had aroused his endless curiosity and interest. He could not wait to comprehend it in one go and master this mysterious power. 3 days later, Chu Li appeared. In the Gloriesville courtyard, other than Xue Ling and Su Ru, there was also Xiao Qi in her fluttering white robe. After she received Su Ru's report, she also shook her head and laughed. She did not think that Chu Li, who was usually steady, would do such a thing. Chu Li had a sense of propriety, so she was not too worried. She only visited him every day to discuss how to deal with the envoys from the imperial residence of King, and Chu Li pushed open the door and entered the courtyard. The 3 women in the gazebo looked at him at the same time, their eyes as clear as water. Xiao Qi looked at him calmly. Su Ru immediately showed a hint of anger. She quickly ran to him and shouted, "Chu Li, you really are a scoundrel." Chu Li smiled and said, "Chief, what's wrong?" "What do you think?" Su Ru glared at him angrily. "We agreed on 2 hours. What about you? You're too much." Chu Li smiled and closed fist saluted. "I was too engrossed in the moment and forgot myself. I didn't notice the time." He took out the Heavens Expanse Go-Chin book from his bosom. "How long have I been studying it?" "You don't know?" Su Ru snatched the secret manual. Still angry, she scoffed, "Don't tell me you don't eat or drink." Chu Li smiled. "I'm in the forest in front. I'll wake up now. Oh, Xue Ling, get me some porridge." "All right," Xue Ling answered crisply and ran into the kitchen with a smile on her face. Xiao Qi said, "You won't eat or drink for 3 days and 3 nights. Will you be able to endure it?" She noticed that Chu Li's complexion was rosy, and he was in high spirits. He did not look like he had been studying for 3 consecutive days and 3 nights. Instead, he seemed to be eating and drinking to his heart's content, living a comfortable life. Lady Xiao wouldn't visit me for no reason. What happened? Chu Li came to the gazebo and sat down. Suru glared at him hatefully. He followed her into the gazebo. Xiao Qi asked, "Have you learned the basics of formations?" Chu Li smiled. "I've only scratched the surface. Over the next 2 days, I'll remodel the Sky Soul Institute and see how it goes. Then we'll wait and see." Xiao Qi said, "There's really something wrong with the envoy from the imperial residence of King, and a palace maid who teaches etiquette was tempted by King and to kill second sister. Only King and would do such a thing. She killed second sister. That palace maid's son will become a scribe in the imperial residence." Palace maid. Chu Li took the tea that Xueling brought in and took a sip. Amazing! A palace maid was different from the people in the imperial residence. Even if she really killed Xiao Shi, the family would not be held accountable. For the sake of the imperial family, she could not go too far. Her son would not be implicated. After the storm subsided, King and would secretly transfer him to the imperial residence. No one would know. How to deal with her is a problem. Xiao Qi frowned. She can't be killed or beaten. She just has evil intentions. She has not taken action yet, and we can't always guard against her. It's hard to control the severity of the situation. She was usually decisive, but she hesitated on this matter. For the sake of the imperial family and King Anne's reputation, it was best to nip the conspiracy in the bud. Her identity as a palace maid meant that she could not use normal methods on her. King Anne was waiting for something to use against her. Chu Li smiled. Poison. Only they are allowed to poison her. We can't. We can't kill her. Xiao Qi sighed. Suru nodded hard. If it was that easy, she would not have to worry. Half dead and lying on the bed will do. Say that she is not acclimatized to the climate and has contracted a serious illness. Let her lie down for a few days. We can give it a try. Xiao Qi said, "We have to do it flawlessly so that King An won't find out. Elder Guomulin has enough methods, right?" Chu Li smiled. Guomulin's medical skills were outstanding. He could cure people, and naturally, he could also kill people. It was easy for him to make people seriously ill. Then it's settled. Xiao Qi nodded. In the evening, the sun was setting. Chu Li brought Xueling and Suru. The three of them took shovels out of the courtyard and went to the woods. Chu Li made marks on the 7 trees. The three of them first dug out the 7 trees and planted them according to the marks, one in and one out. With the help of the scripture of life and death, the 7 trees were not affected. The next morning, after breakfast, Suru left the stargazing tower to find Chu Li as usual. The Gloriesville courtyard was located in a forest on the island. She walked through the forest casually, as usual. After walking for a while, she realized that something was wrong. Why were there trees all the time? She was dazzled and could not find the Gloriesville courtyard. She stepped on the treetop and looked around. It was a vast expanse of green. It was endless. It was as if she was not on the Jade Guardian Island, but a vast forest. The endless trees made her feel lost and hopeless. After she landed, she used her light body technique to move quickly. After an hour, she finally gave up. It seemed that this was a formation. It was amazing. "Chu Li," she called out. The surroundings were silent. There was not even wind. Just when she was about to call for the second time, Chu Li suddenly appeared in front of her. He laughed and said, "Chief, what do you think of this formation?" "Hurry up and get me out of here," Suru said angrily. Chu Li pulled her sleeve and took 2 steps forward. Suru's eyes lit up. She saw the familiar brass ring and wooden door. They were already standing at the entrance of the Gloriesville courtyard. Chu pushed the door open and walked in. He smiled as he walked. Is this formation good? It's okay. Suru scoffed. The 7 trees had such power. It was really amazing. From now on, there was no need to worry about people knowing about the Glories Will courtyard. No one could enter the Glories Will courtyard. Xue Ling welcomed him and smiled. Chief, I've tried it too. I used a knife to chop the trees. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't cut it. Even a knife couldn't cut it. Suru looked at Chu Li. Chu Li said, the power of the formation is beyond imagination, unless there's an enlightened master. I didn't expect the formation. Why don't you set it up for the entire island? Suru smiled. Then there's no need for protectors. Lady Xiao always thought that they were an eyesore. Chu Li smiled. Wouldn't it be too big of a commotion? Once the Jade Guardian Island used the formation, the entire Chongming town would know. Then, the entire Ji dynasty would know that the High Duke's public house had mastered the formation. It's impossible to hide it, Suru said. As long as it's used, people will know. All right, I'll set it up a few days later. Why a few days later? I have something to do outside. All right. Lady Xiao still has 2 books on formation. Do you want to read them? Of course. Chu Li was overjoyed. The Heavens Expanse North Star formation allowed him to thoroughly learn it. However, the art of formation was mysterious. It would be best if he could read more. I'll bring them to you tomorrow. Suru smiled. I'll read them when I come back a few days later. Chu Li smiled. He was itching to go to Tai Hua Valley immediately. He wanted to see what kind of formation Tai Hua Valley used. He also prepared some concentration talismans for Chening. Chapter 211. Suru then learned how to break the formation from Xue Ling. After entering the formation, he had to circle around a tree 3 times in the clockwise direction and 4 times in the opposite direction. Then he had to take 3 steps to the left and 4 steps to the right. After that, he would be able to see the small courtyard. This was only the most basic formation, the disorienting formation. It only had the effect of concealment and had no offensive ability. He activated his lightness skill with all his might and rushed to the side of the giant lake in a day and a night. The small boat floated, carrying him to where Tai Hua Valley was. He stood on the boat, deep in thought, as if he had turned into a statue. The boat swayed with the waves, but he remained motionless. After a day and a night, he turned around and left. Tai Hua Valley's array formation was complex and powerful. It was a set of arrays within arrays, and his mastery of array formations was insufficient. The first was the disorienting formation, which prevented people from getting close to it. The second was the bewitching formation. If one lost their mind and was trapped in the formation, they would quickly lose their minds and commit suicide. The last one was the 5 elements reversal formation. Those who entered the formation would have their heartbeat accelerated and their vision darkened. Their blood and qi would increase rapidly, just like soldiers going berserk. The stronger their martial arts, the greater the damage. If they stayed for a long time, their internal organs would be damaged, and they would die of serious injuries. Chu Li had been deep in thought on the ship for a day and a night. He could only break through the first 2 formations, but he had never seen the last one before. Breaking through it required complicated and massive calculations, which was no different from solving a mathematical puzzle. The most powerful thing about the 5 elements reversal formation was that it would change according to time, making it impossible to guard against. If he stepped in rashly, he would definitely be trapped in the formation. His cultivation was powerful, but compared to the power of the formation, he was like an ant compared to an elephant. Tai Hua Valley had the protection of such a formation. It was truly as stable as a fortress. He was also not that worried about Chenning. He steered the boat back to the lakeside and returned to the public house. Chu returned to the public house. Just as he reached the courtyard, Suru came looking for him and asked him to go to the stargazing tower. Lady Xiao had invited him. When he entered the stargazing tower, Xiao Qi was frowning as she stood in front of the window, lost in thought. Chu felt a strong urge as he stared at the graceful silhouette beneath her white dress. He wanted to step forward and hold her in his arms, but in the end, he cupped his fists and said, "Mississippi." Xiao Qi turned to look at him. Her eyes were as clear as autumn water. That palace maid wanted to commit suicide. If that's the case, Chu Li muttered and took the teacup from Suru. That's easy. Just find her son. I can't get anything out of them. Xiao Qi furrowed her brows and sighed. She only has one thought, which is to let her son enter the imperial residence. She's practically possessed by the devil. Kingen is really ruthless. If the assassination failed, she could commit suicide to recruit her son into the imperial residence. If the imperial maid dies, Prince and will definitely take the opportunity to stir up trouble. A palace maid committing suicide in the public house. The palace would not let it go easily. Kingen added fuel to the fire, and a small matter became a big deal. Leave it to me, Chu Li said. Xiao Qi smiled. She could see through people's minds, but she was not as good as Chu Li. She could not do anything, but Chu Li might be able to. Chu Li followed Xiao Qi to Symphony Island. The island of Symphony was livelier and more noisy than usual. The maids on the island came and went, and the number was twice as many as before. The sound of the zither lingered on the island, quiet and distant. In the pagoda of the Sea of Flowers sat Seosher. She was playing the zither slowly and gracefully. She did not notice their arrival as she concentrated on playing the zither. Xiao Qi and Chu Li did not disturb him. Instead, they entered a pavilion in the west. For male protectors were downstairs. They had long knives on their waists, and their eyes were sharp. When they saw the two of them, they closed fist saluted with a solemn expression. Xiao Qi waved her hand and entered a room on the second floor with Chu Li. Chu Li saw the person lying on the bed. It was a motionless middle-aged woman. Her charming face was pale and pale. She looked haggard. When she saw Xiao Qi, she turned her head and ignored her. Xiao Qi did not say anything. She gave Chu Li a look and left the room. Chu Li took a wooden stool and sat in front of the bed. He looked at her quietly. After a while, the middle-aged imperial maid could not hold it in anymore. She scoffed. "Who are you?" Chu Li said, "The rank 2 scribe of the public house." "Chu Li, it's you?" The middle-aged imperial maid scoffed. "I've heard of you." "Excuse me." Chu Li looked at her and said, "I understand what you're doing. You're risking your life for your child. It's admirable and sad." The middle-aged imperial maid did not say anything. Chu Li said, "Your son is 5 years old, right?" The middle-aged imperial maid still did not say anything. "So he's 10 years old." Chu Li sighed. He lost his mother at the age of 10. His father will probably remarry. The one who will enter the imperial residence in the future might not be your son. It might be his younger brother. The middle-aged imperial maid stared at him coldly. Her eyes flashed. This hit her heart. She could not help but think along Chu Li's words. If she really died, her heartless husband would definitely marry someone else. The child was only good for himself. No matter how virtuous a stepmother was, she would not treat her son too well. Poor Xiao Quan would have to suffer a lot. She, as his mother, could not protect him. Chu Li said, "I know. Your son is now in the hands of King," and the middle-aged imperial maid pursed her lips. If I can save your son, will you still serve King An? Master Chu, you can't win against King, and if King An really has a way, why would he use this method? Chu Li smiled confidently. Why doesn't he send an assassin to kill the second lady? Wouldn't it be more efficient? The middle-aged imperial maid frowned at him. Chu Li said, King An is not as powerful as you think. He can't do it. So if you betray King An, he can't do anything to you. Of course, I will save your son first. The middle-aged imperial maid remained silent. Chu Li waited patiently. He did not rush her. After a while, the middle-aged imperial maid said, What else can I do? She knew that if she did not have enough value, they would not go through so much trouble. Her son was controlled by King An. How could it be so easy to save him? Your understanding of the imperial palace is priceless. Chu Li smiled. The middle-aged imperial maid looked at him. Chu Li said, Tell me where your son lives. I will leave immediately. The middle-aged imperial maid nodded slowly and gave him an address. Chu Li stood up. I will try my best to save him. Hopefully, King An has not killed him yet. What? The middle-aged imperial maid screamed. Chu Li sighed. Even if you can't harm the second lady, as long as you harm the second lady and your son dies, who will everyone think is the killer? The middle-aged imperial maid's expression changed. She came from the imperial palace. She had seen many schemes, but she had always subconsciously refused to think of this possibility. Chu Li pointed it out. Worry and fear immediately overwhelmed her. Chu Li smiled and did not say anything else. He fluttered out of the room. Xiao Qi was sitting in the hall on the first floor. When she heard footsteps, she looked over. Chu Li walked out with her. I will leave immediately after I ask where her son lives. Xiao Qi nodded and looked at him deeply. I will have to trouble you again. I was born to be busy. Chu Li smiled. I will go alone. I don't want the news to be leaked. Okay, I won't be visiting the second lady. I'll tell her. Chu Li left in a hurry. Xiao Qi waited until his silhouette disappeared from the lake. She sighed and shook her head. When she reached the pagoda in the sea of flowers, Xiao Shi stopped playing the guzheng. Where is Chu Li? Xiao Shi looked behind her. Xiao Qi waved her hand and signaled the two maids outside the pagoda to leave. When they left the sea of flowers, she sat opposite Xiao Shi. He will leave first. He has something to do immediately. Just give the order. This matter is urgent and of great importance. He has to do it himself. He is already a rank 2 scribe. There is no other way. The others make me worry. Don't be too harsh. Xiao Shi shook her head. Xiao Qi pursed her lips and smiled. Second sister, he is not your personal scribe yet. Xiao Shi rolled her eyes and scoffed. Nonsense again. Chapter 2:12. The fairies' capital's 3 goats alley. The night was hazy, and the moonlight was like water. Chu Li stood quietly outside the door of a house, sizing it up. This was the imperial maid's house. She must have been rewarded with a lot of money when she left the palace, or else she would not be living here. The capital city was huge, and it was not easy to live here. Commoners could not afford a house in the fairies' capital. He did not see the imperial maid's son in his mind. There was only a drunk man hugging a wine jar and sleeping soundly. His face was red, and he was drunk. His voice was loud like thunder. There were no martial arts masters around. Princeton did not send anyone, or he had already sent someone. He glided into the bedroom and stood in front of the curled-up man. He reached out and patted him to dispel most of his drunkenness. The man was in his 30s. He was tall and somewhat handsome. He could charm many women, but unfortunately his handsome face was bruised. Chu Li could tell at a glance that he had been beaten up by someone. The man turned his body over. His head was facing inwards, and he hugged the wine jar even tighter. Pa! Chuli slapped his back again. It was loud and clear. Wake up! The man sat up and hugged his head with both hands. He quickly curled up and shouted, Don't hit me! Don't hit me! What's your name? Chuli took a chair and sat in front of the bed. Zhu Ziwen, the man said with his eyes closed. Chuli said lightly, Yang Su asked me to come. Yang Su? Zhu Ziwen let go and turned to look at Chuli. That be asterisk TCH. Chuli frowned. Where's the child? Child. Zhu Ziwen's face immediately turned cold. Who are you? What's your relationship with Yang Su? Chu Li had already seen the truth in his mind. His face darkened. You sold the child? He owed a huge gambling debt. Not only did he sell his son, but he also sold his wife, Yang Su. Yang Su had not returned yet. As soon as she returned, the people from the casino would come and get her. The casino was not normal to dare to buy Yang Su, who was an imperial maid. Nonsense. Zhu Ziwen shook his head. Chu Li looked at him coldly. You don't know Yang Su's identity? Zhu Ziwen chuckled. He kept his mouth shut and turned his head away from him. You're really ruthless. Chu Li sized up this man, who looked like gold and jade on the outside. He was truly the scum of the scum. Ha! He's not my son anyway. Zhu Ziwen curled his lips. Chu Li said, Bring me to the casino. I'll pay off your debt and redeem your son. Really? Zhu Ziwen's eyes widened. Chu Li stood up. I don't have time to joke with you. I came to look for your son. Are you little Quan's biological father? No. Then who is little Quan's biological father? You. Chu Li said coldly. One more word, and you'll lose 100 taels of silver. Okay, I won't say it. Zhu Ziwen smiled apologetically. He carefully put down the jar of wine, got out of bed, put on his boots, and walked out. Chu Li followed him into the alley. He looked around and asked, Why did the casino buy your son? Who knows? Zhu Ziwen shrunk his neck and hugged his shoulders. He couldn't stand the chill of the night. He laughed and said, Anyway, I won't kill him and eat his flesh. Chu Li glanced at him. I won't worship him like the eldest young master. What's there to be afraid of? Zhu Ziwen smiled. It's okay. It doesn't matter where he lives as long as he doesn't die. He's not your flesh and blood. Chu Li nodded. Zhu Ziwen nodded. Chu Li shook his head and said nothing more. The fairies' capital was a city that never sleeps. No matter how late it was, there would still be people playing on the streets. They left the alley and arrived at the busy main street. They walked east along the main street and soon arrived at a brightly lit building. Loud noises could be heard coming from the building. The 3 words Fragrance Tower reflected the golden light. This place is run by Prince Chung, so no one dares to owe money. Zhu Ziwen warned, afraid that Chu Li would do something stupid. Chu Li frowned. Prince Chung? Yes. Zhu Ziwen nodded. Prince Chung has a good reputation. He's the most fair in his dealings. No one dares to cheat. If you win money, no one will have any ideas on you. Will Prince Chung do this kind of business? Chu Li scoffed. Zhu Ziwen laughed. These princes dare to do anything. As long as they don't commit murder or arson, no one dares to say anything. Chu Li frowned and nodded. He gestured for him to enter. Zhu Ziwen stood in front of the restaurant and stopped. He puffed out his chest and then shrunk back. He said in a low voice, Can you really help me pay my debt? How much? 1,000 taels. 1,000 taels. You're really good. Chu Li took out a banknote and waved it in front of him. Zhu Ziwen's eyes suddenly lit up. He stared at the banknote and was overjoyed. He puffed out his chest again and walked into the main hall with his head held high. The main hall was brightly lit. It was as bright as day. The people at the tables were focused on the center of the table. They ignored the people entering and exiting. They would roar, sigh, or laugh from time to time. Zhu Ziwen grabbed a waiter and wanted to see third Master Qi. The waiter pointed the way, and Zhu Ziwen brought Chu Li upstairs. The second floor was a restaurant. Tables and tables of delicious food were served. The laughter of men and women mingled with the sound of stringed instruments. It was a luxurious atmosphere. The two of them came to a table and saw the skinny third Master Qi. He had an oval face and a sharp chin. He had 3 strands of goatee. He looked lazy and listless. He glanced at Zhu Ziwen. "Elder Zhu, your wife is back." He was the only one sitting at the table. There was no protector beside him. Chu Li could tell that third Master Qi was an innate master. An innate master would do such a thing. It seemed that this casino was quite famous. Zhu Ziwen puffed out his chest and laughed. "Third Master, I'm here to pay my debt." "How are you going to pay your debt?" Third Master Qi smiled. "You've sold your wife and son. Oh, you're selling your house. Listen to me, go home and live your life. This brother will repay my debt." Zhu Ziwen pointed at Chu Li and smiled at him in an attempt to please him. Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Third Master Qi, how much does he owe?" 1,000 taels. Third Master Qi squinted his eyes and looked at Chu Li. "Our restaurant is the fairest. We won't compound interest. 1,000 taels is 1,000 taels. Are you really going to pay for him?" Chu Li took out the 1,000 taels banknote and put it on the table. "Where's the child? You still want the child back?" Third Master Qi smiled and shook his head. "It's too late. We've already dealt with it. If you return this 1,000 taels, his wife won't have to come over." "Where's the child?" Chu Li took out another 1,000 taels banknote and put the 2 banknotes together. "This 1,000 taels is for the child." "How generous." Third Master Qi smiled. His squinted eyes lit up. He sighed. "Unfortunately, you're too late. The child might have been cleansed by now." Chu Li took out another 10,000 taels banknote and put it on top of the 2,000 taels banknotes. "If you see the child in 15 minutes, these are all yours." His green robe moved even though there was no wind. He looked at third Master Qi calmly. Third Master Qi's expression changed. An innate master. Chu Li took out 1,000 taels banknote and shook it lightly. The banknote turned into pieces. "If you don't see the child in 15 minutes, this will be the end of these banknotes." Bang! Third Master Qi slammed the table and stared at Chu Li angrily. Chu Li looked at him calmly. Third Master Qi's eyes flashed. He shouted, "Guards!" 2 men in green robes responded and strode towards him. Third Master Qi gritted his teeth and said slowly, "Get Elder Zhu's son back. If you don't see him in 15 minutes, don't come back." "Yes," the 2 men shouted. They turned around and rushed to the window. They pushed it open and jumped out. Chapter 2:13. Chu Li looked at Third Master Qi. "Third Master Qi, I heard that this restaurant is owned by Prince Cheng." He, who's talking nonsense? This restaurant is mine." Third Master Qi waved his hand and said disapprovingly, "People nowadays believe whatever they hear. They believe whatever rumors they hear without thinking. Prince Cheng has a noble status. How could he do such a thing?" Third Master Qi waved his hand and said disapprovingly. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to see what he was thinking. This in a fragrance indeed belonged to Prince Cheng. Third Master Qi used to be Prince Cheng's scribe, and now he was released to manage this in a fragrance. Chu Li said, "Zhu Ziwen's wife used to be a maid, and Third Master Chi dared to buy her. Without Prince Cheng's support, most people would not have the guts to do so. Lu Su used to be a maid. Third Master Chi's expression changed. Chu Li smiled, faintly. If Lu Su came back and saw this situation, she would write a letter to the palace or go to the magistrate's office to complain. I wonder what would happen. Third Master Chi's guts are not ordinary. Third Master Chi's expression changed again. He could hear the threat in Chu Li's words. If things got out of hand, he would not be able to touch the Inn of Fragrance, but the higher-ups would blame him, and he would be punished. Chu Li looked at him and sat down at the table without saying a word. Third Master Chi's expression was cold as well. Zhu Ziwen shrunk his neck uncomfortably. The restaurant was warm like spring, but he felt cold. Bang, bang. 2 thuds were heard. 2 men in green entered through the window and landed in front of Third Master Chi. Third Master Chi saw that they were empty-handed, and his face turned gloomy. Where is he? The 2 men lowered their heads and said dejectedly, Third Master, that child is dead. Dead. Third Master Chi clenched his teeth and said, Did Eldergwa say that? Yes. Eldergwa said that the child did not make it and died. He has already found someone to bury him. Third Master Chi's face turned pale. He turned to look at Chu Li and then at the banknotes on the table. If he could get these banknotes, 10,000 taels would be in his pocket. The Inn of Fragrance had a lot of money, but that money belonged to the Royal Highness and did not belong to him. He would be lucky if he could get 10,000 taels in a year. This time, a year's worth of profits was gone in an instant. It was simply intolerable. Chu Li took out the 1,000 taels banknote, shook it lightly, and shattered it into pieces. He then took out another 10,000 taels banknote. Hold on. Third Master Chi raised his hand and shouted. Chu Li said, Looks like these silvers are not fated to be with Third Master Chi. How about this? I'll be more lenient and bring Old Gua here. I want to see him in person and see who owns the 10,000 taels. What are you waiting for? Third Master Chi roared. The 2 burly men rushed out of the window in a hurry. Third Master Chi stared at the banknotes with his small eyes. Chu Li slowly put the banknotes back into his pocket. Is this Eldergwa castrator? He's in charge of sending eunuchs to the palace. Third Master Chi's facial expression returned to normal. His squinted eyes flickered with light. If not for the fact that the fellow in front of him was a Sciention realm expert, a level higher than him, it would have been a pity if he had snatched the banknotes in the morning. Even if he called everyone, they might not be able to stop him. Moreover, if they really fought, even if he could borrow manpower from the prince's mansion, Floating Fragrance House would still suffer a huge loss. Their business would become a lot quieter, and all that would be lost would be his own money. When doing business, he should use the hard and soft methods. Money was the most important. Chu Li turned his head and looked at Zhu Ziwen. Zhu Ziwen's face showed that he did not care at all. This bastard is finally dead. Third Master Chi coughed lightly and put on a fake smile. I've been here for a long time, and I still haven't asked for your name. Master. Chu Li said lightly, It's better not to say. Oh. Third Master Chi smiled. What's so hard to say? If I tell you my name, I'm afraid I'll have to kill you. Chu Li said lightly. Third Master Chi laughed. Master, how could you be friends with Elder Zhu? This kind of man is a waste of food. I know Lu Su. Chu Li looked at him with a faint smile. Third Master Chi forced a smile. He was frightened by Chu Li. The older one was, the more timid he would be. Chu Li's innate mastery level and his arrogant manner showed that his identity was not ordinary. In addition to his relationship with Lu Su, It was possible that he was related to the palace. He would rather endure it. If he was wrong, he would take revenge even more. He could not offend someone he should not offend and lose his life. The two of them stopped talking. The noise around them became louder. Chuli sat still. In his mind, he could clearly see the inside and outside of the Inn of Fragrance. He could also see the place where the banknotes were kept. There were 2 grandmasters guarding the place. A scream was heard. A man in black flew in from the window and sat in front of Chuli. The 2 men landed on the ground and stared at him expressionlessly. The man in black was an old man with a pale face. He had shifty eyes, and his eyes were flickering. He quickly looked around and straightened his body. He closed fist saluted. "Third Master, if there's anything you need, just let me know. There's no need to make such a big scene, right?" Third Master Chi frowned. "Elder Gua, did the kid you bought 3 days ago really die?" "Hee, that kid was so fair and clean. It's such a pity." Elder Gua shook his head. He showed a pitiful expression. If he really entered the palace, he might be able to make a name for himself. It's such a pity that he didn't have such a rich life. Chuli said, "Elder Gua, you sold him for 100 taels, right?" "What?" Elder Gua was stunned. He quickly said, "What do you mean by 100 taels? I don't understand." Chuli shook his head. "How much did you spend here? 10 taels? You sold him for 100 taels. What a good deal. If it were me, I would also say that he died." "Elder Gua," Third Master Chi said coldly. Elder Gua looked at Chuli and then looked at Third Master Chi. He felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly said, All right, I'll tell you. I sold that kid." "Who did you sell him to?" "I really don't know. 2 guys came to buy him for 100 taels. I'm not stupid. Of course, I sold him." Third Master Chi gritted his teeth. His gaze became colder and colder. Chuli took out 2 banknotes worth 10,000 taels and put them on the table. "Third Master Chi, if you find the kid, these are all yours. Here's 10,000 taels. Keep it first. I'll give you the other 10,000 taels when you find the kid," he said as he passed the 10,000 taels to Third Master Chi. Third Master Chi took it and gave a thumbs up. "Good. Leave this matter to me." He turned his head and stared at them. "You two and Elder Gua, find those 2 guys. If you find him, I'll give you 1,000 taels each. If you can't find him, don't even think about living." This, Elder Gua, was in a dilemma. Third Master Chi looked at him coldly. "Why? You can't do it." All right, I'll try. Elder Gua sighed. "Third Master, you're well informed. I'm sure you can find them. Humph, it's good that you know." Third Master Chi scoffed. He immediately put on a friendly face. "Master, don't worry. As long as they're still in the fairy's capital, I'll be able to find them." Chuli nodded and pointed at Zhu Ziwen. "Third Master, please help me send him to hell." Zhu Ziwen was shocked. He quickly shouted, "What do you mean? What are you trying to do?" "Chu." Li did not even look at him. Third Master Chi laughed. "This kind of man should have died long ago. Leave it to me." He signaled with his eyes. 2 muscular men walked up to Zhu Ziwen and sealed his acupuncture points. They then carried him downstairs. Chapter 214. Through the omniscient mirror, Chuli saw that 2 burly men in martial attire helped him down the stairs. Then they immediately sealed his vital acupuncture point and covered him with a gunny sack. Then they tied him up with a rock and threw him into the river. They seemed to be very familiar with the process. It was obvious that it was not their first time doing this. This time, they killed Zhu Ziwen. The people they killed in the past were not people who deserved to die. Chu Li's killing intent surged, but he suppressed it. He closed fist saluted and said, "Third, Master Chi, I'll come tomorrow. I hope I can find him. I'll take my leave first." "Don't worry, Master. We'll find him tomorrow as long as he's alive." Third Master Chi smiled. Chu Li turned around and went downstairs. Two middle-aged men came from the table next to him. They stared at Chu Li's silhouette and went closer to Third Master Chi. "Third Master, should we?" He wiped his neck with his palm. Third Master Chi's eyes flashed. After a while, he shook his head. "Send someone to check his background first." "No problem," the two middle-aged men replied, and left quickly. Chu Li strolled along the street. After a dozen meters, he got rid of the people behind him. He took a slow detour and arrived at an antique shop. There was a middle-aged man sitting in the antique shop. He was reading a book. Two assistants were cleaning the shop and antiques carefully. The three of them nodded and smiled when they saw him coming in. Chu Li walked towards the middle-aged man and passed him the jade pendant. "I want to sell this. Please take a look." The middle-aged man was skinny and had a thin face. He did not know any martial arts. He put down the book and looked at the white jade pendant. His expression changed slightly, but he said calmly, "This is a good item. Follow me. Let's take a closer look." The two of them entered the back of the shop. It led to an exquisite courtyard. The middle-aged man closed fist saluted. "Ning Pingbo greets Chief Chu." Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Brother Ning, help me find 2 adults and a child." "Yes," Ning Pingbo said. "What do they look like?" "Bring me a brush and ink. Follow me." The two of them entered the study room of the courtyard. Ning Pingbo ground the ink himself, while Chu Li drew 12 portraits of 3 people. Each of them had 4 portraits. Ning Pingbo looked at the 3 of them. "They are—" Chu Li said, "I'm looking for this child. These 2 people bought him from the Flying Blade Elder Gua." "All right, I'll mobilize my men immediately," Ning Pingbo said in a deep voice. "Chief, rest here for the night." Chu Li nodded. "Thank you. You flatter me." Ning Pingbo smiled and said, "We can't wait to be busy. Should we get 2 maids to serve tea and water?" Chu Li smiled. "I came here in secret. It's not wise to alarm others. Thank you for your kindness." "Yes." Ning Pingbo took the portrait and left. The undercurrent in the fairy's capital was turbulent. The 2 local tyrants were mobilizing their men to search for the 2 of them. Chu Li silently made a trip to King An's imperial residence and observed King An from a hidden spot. King An's injuries had yet to heal. On the contrary, it was even more serious. Chu Li became more and more interested in the heart technique that injured King An. He saw a young woman in King An's mind. It was she who injured King An. This woman was as beautiful as a flower. Her eyes sparkled like pearls. She was a peerless beauty that was not inferior to Seo Shi. Unfortunately, he did not know this woman's identity. She looked to be about the same age as him. Looking at this woman and thinking about Mei Ao Shuang, Chu Li could not help but sigh. This world was full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were many who were more powerful than him. In the wee hours of the morning, Chu Li was meditating on his bed. Footsteps were heard from outside. Chu Li opened the door. Ning Pingbo stood under the moonlight. He closed fist saluted and said softly, "Chief, there's news." "Come in and talk." Chu Li was excited. Ning Pingbo followed Chu Li into the house. The 2 sat in the living room and talked. "The identities of the 2 of them have been investigated. They are human traffickers. The little fella has been found." Ning Pingbo said, "Oh, right. The fragrance brothel is also looking for these 2. Third Master Chi, who found him first. Third Master Chi's men found him first, but we intercepted him halfway. Where's the child? Ning Pingbo said. He has been sent to a safe place. Do you want to send him over? Even if Chief Chu Li was strong in martial arts and wise, he would not be able to handle a 5-year-old child. Ning Pingbo was very thoughtful. He first settled him in a family and was cooking for him. He tried to calm his emotions so that he would not cry and torment Chief Chu Li. Chu Li said, I will bring him away in the morning. Is it safe there? Don't worry, Chief. There will be no problem. That's good. I will go there and leave tomorrow. Chu Li smiled. Okay. Ning Pingbo stood up. The two of them left the antique shop, walked along a small alley for 2 miles, and entered a house. Chu Li saw a 5-year-old child. He was chubby, and his big round eyes were full of life. He was holding a bowl and eating happily. The corner of his mouth was stained with rice. The middle-aged woman next to him smiled and wiped it off. Chu Li knew that he was Zhu Quan, the son of Lu Su. Chu Li let out a long sigh and said with satisfaction, Brother Ning, thank you very much. It is my honor to be able to serve Chief. Ning Pingbo smiled respectfully. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. It was early in the morning. The birds outside the window were chirping nonstop. The sound was crisp and dense. Third Master Chi opened his eyes on the bed. He had a splitting headache. He felt dizzy and dizzy. He got up and sat on the bed for half a day before he came back to his senses. Holding his head, he slowly got off the bed. He saw that his concubine was still sleeping soundly under the red brocade quilt. He patted her white thigh. The concubine rolled up the quilt and continued to sleep. He was too lazy to wake her. He got up and left the bedroom. 2 maids came over to help him wash his face. After washing up, he went to the courtyard and cultivated for a while. His body was stretched and the dizziness was gone. He sat at the stone table in the courtyard and thought about what happened last night. He found the 2 men, but they were intercepted by someone else. There was another force looking for the 2 men too. Was it a coincidence, or was it because the extravagant master had found someone else? Based on his extravagance, it was not difficult to find them. He must have offered a huge reward. If he offered a reward of 10,000 taels here, the other side must have offered a lot too. 10,000 taels of silver was enough for them to fight over. It was all because of the money. He was greedy for 10,000 taels of silver. He did not care about his identity at all. It was possible that he was from another imperial residence. He grinned and sneered twice. He had investigated this man. He was not from any imperial residence. He was an outsider. He had guts. As the saying goes, one should not show off one's wealth. He was so ostentatious because he was not afraid of others. An innate master was powerful, but 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. If a few more innate masters surrounded him, they might be able to kill him. He might have more than 10,000 taels of banknotes in his pocket. No matter what, he would kill him today. How dare he learn from Jianglong? Bang! Bang! Suddenly, there was a hurried knock on the courtyard door. Soon, a man in green rushed in and shouted, "Third Master, something bad happened." Third Master Chi frowned and looked at him. "Calm down. Just tell me what happened." Aroma Restaurant was robbed. The man in green said angrily, "All the silver in the restaurant was robbed. Not a single tael of silver was left." "Where are the banknotes?" Third Master Chi stood up and asked slowly while gritting his teeth. He pressed his hand on the table, showing his veins. They looked like earthworms wriggling. Not a single one was left. The man in green said angrily, "We have not handed in our earnings for this month. The banknotes are no less than 100,000 taels. 100,000 taels. Third Master Chi's body swayed. He gritted his teeth. Such a ruthless man. Third Master, what should we do? The man in green said, how are we going to investigate? Third Master, tell us. Investigate my ass. Third Master Chi was furious. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? He turned around and went to his concubine's dressing table. He opened a jewelry box, but it was empty. He opened another one, but it was also empty. He opened all of them, but they were all empty. The banknotes hidden inside, including the 10,000 taels from yesterday, were all gone. Ah! Third Master Chi shouted angrily. Chapter 215. Third Master. The man in green heard him yell angrily and quickly called out, ah! Third Master Chi screamed again and stopped abruptly. Third Master, the man in green felt something was wrong and quickly called out, but there was no movement inside. Third Master, the man in green shouted, Third Master, can I go in now? There was still no movement inside. The man in green did not care about anything else and strode into the house. He saw Third Master Chi lying on the ground, bleeding from all 7 orifices. Third Master. The man in green screamed and went forward to check on him. He was already dead. Chu Li was carrying Zhu Quan as they rode on the wind. They flew past the treetops and crossed the mountains. Zhu Quan was not afraid at all. Instead, he widened his eyes and looked around excitedly. He cheered from time to time. Chu Li smiled. He was so brave, as expected of a boy. Looking at his cheerful expression, he did not look like he was frightened. Uncle Chu, can I really see my mother? He asked with his eyes wide open. Chu Li smiled. Yes. Then when can I see my mother? I can see her tomorrow. I miss my mother so much. You and your mother will never be separated again. Yes. Zhu Quan nodded and shouted happily, we will never be separated again. Chu Li smiled. Third Master Chi should be dead by now. The rest should be dead too. Zhu Ziwen died in the hands of Third Master Chi. No matter what he said, it was Third Master Chi who killed him. When Zhu Quan grows up, he will avenge his father and look for Third Master Chi. Prince Cheng must have suffered a great loss this time. He might investigate further, but since everyone who knew about it died, he would not be able to find out anything. Chu Li had a bad impression of these princes. Prince and Prince Cheng had good reputations. If that was the case, it was hard to imagine what would happen to those with bad reputations. Uncle Chu, please accept me as your disciple. Zhu Quan looked at Chu Li eagerly. I want to practice martial arts too. You have to ask your mother. Uncle Chu's martial arts is so powerful. Mother will definitely agree. That might not be the case. Chu Li lowered his head and smiled. Practicing martial arts is very hard. Your mother might not want you to suffer. I can bear hardships. Zhu Quan hurriedly said, Father didn't give me anything to eat for 2 days, and I didn't complain. Chu Li held onto his little hand as their feet fluttered. It's even more bitter than that. I'm not afraid. Zhu Quan shouted. Chu Li smiled. I'm very strict when it comes to accepting disciples. You must be smart and knowledgeable enough. Studying, Zhu Quan's face turned bitter. Chu Li laughed out loud. As the two of them chatted and laughed, the scenery around them quickly passed by. Liu was lying quietly on the bed, looking at the seaweed well in the room. His heart was at a loss, and his future was unpredictable. Mother! A clear and melodious voice woke her up. She immediately recognized this familiar and beautiful voice. Turning her head to look, she saw Zhu Quan bouncing into the room and throwing himself onto the bed. Liu widened her eyes and reached out to touch Zhu Quan's face. His delicate skin was warm, which made her realize that she was not dreaming. "Mother, why are you crying?" Zhu Quan's eyes widened in confusion. He chuckled and said, "I miss my mother." Liu Xiu choked with sobs as she nodded and pulled him into her arms. Chu Li, Xiao Qi, and Xiao Shi looked into the room and walked out of the building to the gazebo in the middle of the sea of flowers. "Did it go well?" Xiao Qi asked softly as she looked at Chu Li. Chu Li looked like he had been through a lot. It was really hard for him to go back and forth in 3 days. He was travel-worn. There was an inexplicable emotion lingering in her heart. It was so complicated that she could not distinguish it. Xiao Shi also stared at Chu Li. She did not blink. She was getting more and more curious about Chu Li. She wanted to see what kind of person he was and whether he really liked third younger sister. According to her observation, Chu Li really liked third younger sister. As for third younger sister, she was also restraining herself. Both of them clearly liked each other, but they were both suppressing it. It was really interesting. She sighed to herself. It seemed that Chu Li really did save her because he loved her and not because he liked her. This made her even more interested in Chu Li. She knew that she was more beautiful than him. Men usually loved women's beauty. Chu Li actually abandoned her and fell in love with third younger sister. He was indeed different from other men. After Chu Li sat down, he briefly recounted the events that had transpired. The two women listened attentively and stared at him with their limpid eyes. Through Chu Li's casual narration, they could feel the thrill of it. It was really dangerous. If they were one step late, the two of them might have taken the child out of the fairy's capital. It would be extremely difficult to find them. It seems that sometimes silver is more useful than martial arts. Xiao Qi said. Xiao Shi nodded. Chu Li smiled. Money can move the gods. The power of silver has always been strong. People are used to being impulsive and instinctive. They always use martial arts to solve their problems. This world was prosperous with martial arts. People were used to using martial arts to solve problems. It was simpler and more direct. Sometimes it was not easy to get things done. It's all thanks to you. Xiao Qi shook her head and sighed. She did not want to trouble Chu Li with everything. After all, Chu Li was now a rank 2 scribe. He had a high position and power. These things could be done with just a word from him. However, there was really no one in the public house who was better at handling things. Chu Li walked to the front of the table and picked up a brush. He dipped it into the still, wet ink stone and drew a portrait. After a while, a beautiful, smiling face appeared on the paper. He blew it dry and passed it to Xiao Qi. "Do you recognize this woman?" "Lu Yurong," Xiao Qi said. "You saw her this time?" "She went to the fairy's capital." Chu Li shook his head. "The one who hurt Prince and is this woman. Looks like she's a grandmaster." "Impossible." Xiao Qi frowned. Chu Li said she could hurt Prince and so badly. An innate master can't do it. What martial arts does Lu Yurong practice? Xiao Qi frowned and shook her head. Lu Yurong was famous, but very few people had seen her. She was mysterious, and no one knew what kind of martial arts she practiced. In people's impression, she was like Xiao Shi, hiding in her room, as if she did not know any martial arts. Chu Li sighed. "I was almost deceived by her." He always thought that Lu Yurong's martial arts was not high. Otherwise, she would not hide in the public house. If she was a grandmaster, she could go anywhere in the world. She was not afraid of plots and assassinations. She could resist the urge to do whatever she wanted. Her shrewdness was really amazing. Xiao Qi frowned and did not say anything. She really did not think that Lu Yurong would be a grandmaster. Mei Ao Shuang was the same age as her. She became a grandmaster not because she was intelligent, but because her talent coincided with the heart technique of Tai Hua Valley, and she had a fortuitous encounter. What about Lu Yurong? Not only was she intelligent, she was also a grandmaster. My lady, I want to personally go to Hawaii Public House and train a group of spies, Chu Li said. Go ahead and do it. Siochi nodded. I will convince Big Brother. They could not find out such important news. Of course, it was because Lu Yurong was cunning and the spies were incompetent. All these years, she was mostly dealing with internal affairs. She rarely intervened in external affairs. Big Brother handled most of them. Big Brother was somewhat resistant to these methods, so the spies were inevitably weak. Chuli got up. Then I will go back first. Siochi and Siosher stood up and watched him float away. Chuli returned to the small courtyard. Schwelling smiled like a flower and served him attentively. She first helped him wash up, changed his clothes, and served him tea. Then, she brought over a few books on formations that Suru gave him so that he could slowly read and study them. He wanted to break through Tai Hua Valley's formation. Of course, he was worried about Chunying's situation. He also had his own thoughts. Tai Hua Valley was very likely to have a surpassing state. With two grandmasters, how could there not be a surpassing state? If he could see the wonders of the surpassing state, he might be able to step into the grandmaster's boundary. Chapter 2:16. After serving Chu Li his meal, she saw that he was focused on studying formations. She knew that he would not listen to her no matter what she said, so she left the Gloriesville courtyard and sailed the boat to the East Garden. Liu stood at the shore to welcome her. When he saw her, he waved his hand happily. Shue waved her hand lightly and did not move until the boat reached the shore. Liu walked up and laughed. Miss Shue, is Brother Chu back? Shue had always been swift and decisive in her actions. She was very punctual. She came later than yesterday. The only person who could make Shue delay her was Chu Li. Shue landed on the shore lightly. Yes, he just came back. Sigh. It's too tiring for him to be a chief. He's busy all day long. Liu sighed. It's not as peaceful as the East Garden. It's better to be a rank 9 scribe. It's relaxing. Master has no choice. He doesn't like to be busy. But now that things have happened, he has to deal with it. Shue walked in lightly and asked, Is Sister Lu here? Not yet. Liu shook his head. She's late today. Shue stopped and frowned slightly. She turned her head to look at the lake far away. Lu was never late. Why was she late today? Did something happen? The New Moon brothel was under the protection of the House of High Dukes. No one dared to mess around, but the world was unpredictable. There would always be people who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Master had dealt with 2 groups of people before. There might be more. I'll go take a look. She turned and walked back. Liu quickly said, She might have been delayed. Miss Lu is also under the control of the New Moon brothel. She has no choice. Yes. Shue floated onto the boat. Liu looked at her helplessly. The boat swung away from the shore like an arrow and disappeared in a moment. He sighed and shook his head. Miss Shue was cold and arrogant. Only Chu Li could control her. Chu Li told him that he wanted her to practice dancing with Miss Lu of the New Moon brothel in the East Garden. That night, he was so excited that he could not sleep. Miss Lu was on the top floor of the New Moon brothel. To be able to see her every day was his luck. Although it was difficult for women like Miss Lu to fall in love with men, their hearts were tightly shut and very few men could enter them. But as time passed, they fell in love with each other. They saw him all day long and took the opportunity to court him. Perhaps it would succeed. If he could marry Lady Bai Lu as his wife, what more could he ask for? Unfortunately, the reality was not as wonderful as he thought, because Xueling was there. Xueling was a completely different person in front of him compared to when she was in front of Chu Li. She was as cold as ice and kept people at a distance of 1,000 miles. She did not pretend to be polite, even though he was a good friend of her master. This made him so angry that his teeth itched, but he could do nothing about it. He could not possibly complain to Chu Li. He said your maid was too cold and arrogant. Xueling was well-mannered, and no one could find fault with her. Chu Li could not possibly ask her to smile at him. Could he? Fortunately, they were cold. After all, they were two great beauties. Ever since they came, the East Garden had changed a lot. The surrounding air was more fragrant, as if it carried the delicate fragrance of their bodies. Life suddenly became better. The world around him was much brighter, and every morning when he woke up, he was happy. Xue saw Bai Lu on the lake. Lu stood at the bow of the ship, her green gown fluttering in the wind. Her slender body seemed to move with the wind like a willow branch. Although Xueling was a woman, she could not help but admire Lu when she saw her. Lu's maid rowed the oars. The speed was not fast, but compared to Xueling's ship, it was like an old bull and a galloping horse. Xueling let out a long sigh of relief. The small ship shot over. When it was near, she lightly leaped onto Lu's ship, held her slender waist, and floated back. She urged the small ship to shoot away, and in the blink of an eye, the maid's small ship was nowhere to be seen. Sister, what happened? Xueling stood side by side with Lu, her white gown fluttering in the wind. She saw Lu's delicate eyes were swollen, and it was obvious that she had cried last night. She said softly, "What happened?" Lu looked at the clear surface of the lake and shook her head gently. Then what happened? Xueling turned to look at her. Lu sighed faintly. Xueling said, "Sister, we are not strangers. Why can't you say it?" Lu smiled bitterly. "It's the trouble at home." "Where is sister's hometown?" "Town of Clouds." "Didn't your parents bring you here?" Xueling was very surprised. The women in the New Moon brothel were all rich, and they had all bought houses in the town. They usually lived in their own homes and only came to the New Moon brothel when it was their turn. Normally, they would bring their parents to live a comfortable life. Chongming Town was not only prosperous and lively, it was far better than other places. It was also the safest place to live. They despised me for entering the New Moon brothel. Lu's delicate face showed bitterness. Sigh, no wonder. Xueling sighed. Sister, why don't you redeem yourself? If I redeem myself, how am I going to support myself? Lu sighed. I will beg Master to let you enter the public house. I have nothing good, and my family is not clean. Don't worry, Master will agree. Lu shook her head gently. I don't want to trouble Master Chu, and I like this kind of life free and unfettered. The New Moon brothel was not a brothel. They only sold their skills, not their bodies. If anyone wanted to buy their bodies, they could only redeem themselves. With the support of the public house, no one dared to be unreasonable. The women in the brothel relied on their beauty and talents to survive. The men they came into contact with every day were either rich or of high status. Their knowledge and vision were unknowingly increased. They were in the upper class all day long, and the New Moon brothel was incomparably prosperous. How could they be willing to marry and raise their children? If this was Chu Li's past life, it would be like a young superstar retiring from the world. You guys, Xueling shook her head. It's the same as what Master said. Then tell me, what's bothering you? Tell me. It's that brother of mine. Lu held her forehead and sighed worriedly. He's restless all day long. This time, he was seriously injured. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on any longer. Which faction of martial arts is he from? Lu shook her head. He had a master since he was young. I don't know where he came from. He was seriously injured and fell on the side of the road. I saved him, and he became his master. 2 years ago, his master passed away. He's like a horse without a rein, causing a lot of trouble. The grudges of the martial arts world. Schweling frowned and shook her head. What martial arts world? She did not like martial arts masters the most. Is his injury very serious? My father wrote to say that he won't make it. He's hanging on by a thread. He won't last more than a few days. The doctor has already given up on medication. Then why aren't you going back? Sigh. My father won't let me go back. If I go back, I'll be chased out. How about this? Let's go. Schweling turned the small boat to the left, away from the direction of the east garden. She sped up again. The two women's clothes fluttered in the wind. The small boat was like a galloping horse on the plains. After a while, they arrived at a lush green island. Schweling asked Lu to wait on the boat while she floated away. After a while, she came back with a handsome man. This is Brother Jiang Kuai. His light body technique is excellent. Let him go and save your brother. Schweling floated onto the boat. Jiang Kuai floated onto the small boat too. He moved the boat and gave Lu a fist salute. He smiled. I'm Jiang Kuai. Where's Lady Lu's home? Lu looked at Schweling helplessly and told him her home address. Jiang Kuai smiled. I'll rush over as soon as possible. Lu curtsied. Thank you, Master Jiang. Chapter 217. Jiang Kuai got off the boat. He did not ride a horse, but used his light body technique to gallop away. He knew that the situation was urgent, and his life was at stake. He did not stop for a moment, and used all his strength to perform his light body technique. If his inner energy was not enough, he would use the pill of vitality. In one breath, he reached the town of clouds and arrived at Lu's house. Even though Lu had given a lot of money to her family, her parents did not touch a single penny. They saved it all and still lived in the original house. It was the most ordinary courtyard in the town, shabby and narrow. The small courtyard was empty and flat. A weapon rack was placed at the side, turning it into a small training field. At this time, the house was gloomy. An old man was sitting on the doorstep of the main house, smoking with his head down. Puffs of thick smoke came out of his mouth. His frowning face was faintly discernible, his wrinkles all squeezed together. There was a low, choking sound coming from the house, intermittent. Jiang Kuai floated into the small courtyard like a leaf. The old man was still smoking with his head down and did not notice him. Jiang Kuai coughed softly. Is this old son's house? The old man quickly looked up and saw Jiang Kuai. He suddenly showed a vigilant look and stood up. Who are you? Jiang Kuai gave a fist salute. I am Jiang Kuai. Miss Lu asked me to come and visit her brother. Lu. The old man frowned, and his face turned gloomy. I don't know who Lu is. Leave. Jiang Kuai said, Miss Lu knows that her brother is seriously injured, so she asked me to send the spirit medicine. The spirit medicine is useless. The old man's face relaxed, and he shook his head. Jiang Kuai smiled. It seems that your son is not dead yet. The old man's face turned gloomy again. He stared at Jiang Kuai fiercely and sighed. Soon, Jiang Kuai said, as long as he is not dead, the spirit medicine can save him. To save him or not to save him, please decide quickly. If you delay any longer, I'm afraid your son will really die. You can really save him? How would I know if I don't try? All right, come in. Old son quickly invited him into the house. Although the little girl had ruined the family's reputation and brought misfortune to the family, the people she interacted with were all noble people. Maybe there really was a spirit medicine that could save his son. Jiang Kuai entered the dark house. A handsome young man was lying on the bed in the bedroom. His face was flushed as if he was drunk, and he had already passed out. His breathing was rapid and intermittent, as if it would stop at any moment. Sitting next to him was an old woman holding the young man's right hand tightly. Her eyes were already red and swollen like a peach, and she was still choking intermittently. Jiang Kuai took out a white jade bottle from his bosom and carefully poured out a spirit blessing pill. After stuffing it into the young man's mouth, he helped him up and sat cross-legged behind him. His vigorous inner energy was slowly injected into the young man's body, helping the pill to dissolve. The old couple widened their eyes, not daring to make a sound. Sigh. The handsome youth suddenly let out a long sigh, and the redness on his face quickly faded away. His complexion became pale, and his breathing became steady and powerful. Even if the old couple didn't have any medical skills, they could tell that their son was much better just by looking at him. They immediately looked happy. Jiang Kuai continuously channeled inner energy into his palms to speed up the recovery of his injuries. After a while, white mist appeared on top of Jiang Kuai and the young man's head. The mist was as thin as silk, like it was caused by burning a few sticks of incense. As time passed, the silk-like mist became denser, and white steam surged like steamed buns. The old couple felt that a long time had passed, and they stared at the two of them. The steaming mist rolled more and more violently. Suddenly, the white mist converged and went into the top of their heads. Jiang Kuai opened his eyes. His gaze was like lightning, and it lit up the room. The handsome youth also slowly opened his eyes. Jiang Kuai released his palms and floated down to the ground. He smiled and said, "You should be fine now." The handsome youth turned to look at him and hesitated. "Brother, you are?" "I'm Jiang Kuai. Your sister asked me to come and save you." Jiang Kuai smiled. The handsome youth quickly gave a fist salute. "I'm Ping. Thank you, Brother Jiang, for saving my life." Jiang Kuai waved his hand. "No need to thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank your sister." "How are you now?" Ping waved his fist excitedly and smiled. "I'm better than before. Father, Mother, I'm unfilial. I've made you worry." He vaguely heard his mother crying. He felt extremely uncomfortable and guilty. The old couple was beaming with joy. They were so excited that they didn't know what to do. They wanted to kneel down in front of Jiang Kuai. Jiang Kuai said, "Brother Ping, who hurt you?" The palm energy was so powerful. If he did not have the spirit blessing pill, he might not have been able to suppress the strange palm energy. Humph! Startling cloud association. Ping gritted his teeth. "I must avenge this." Startling cloud association. Jiang Kuai was stunned. "Brother Jiang, you know about the startling cloud association?" Ping scoffed. "Their reputation has spread to Chongming Town. That's really like a flood against the Temple of the Dragon King. We don't know each other anymore." Jiang Kuai smiled bitterly. "Let's put the revenge aside. Elder son, in my opinion, we should go to Chongming Town. People from the martial arts world are not allowed to fight in the town. It's the safest place to go." Elder son's face darkened. He remained silent. If it was before, he would have rejected without hesitation. He did not want to see that stupid girl who ruined the family. He did not want to live in the same town as her. His son had narrowly escaped death this time, but he hesitated. The startling Cloud Association was the #1 association in Cloud Town. They had many masters and could cover the sky with one hand. going against the startling Cloud Association was equivalent to seeking death. However, this kid was stubborn and stubborn. If he could not be persuaded, he would definitely cause trouble. Ping suddenly shouted excitedly, "Dad, Mom, let's listen to Brother Jiang. Let's go to Chongming Town and join Sister's side." "Shut up." Elder son glared at him. Ping shrunk his neck and shut his mouth. Jiang Kuai said, "Elder son, actually, if you go to Chongming Town, there's a benefit. Miss Lu can leave the New Moon brothel." "How could she bear to leave?" Elder son said hatefully. "If she really listened to me, she would have come back a long time ago." Jiang Kuai smiled. "Both of you go there personally. You go to her place every day to cause trouble. How is that the same as writing a letter and scolding her?" "That's right," Ping quickly said. He had been longing to go to Chongming Town for a long time. Unfortunately, his parents were still alive and he could not leave. Now that he had the opportunity to go to Chongming Town, he would not let it go. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. He would come back for revenge in the future. He quickly said, "Dad, think about it. If you say in the letter that you want to die, Sister will not be at ease. But if you want to commit suicide in front of Sister, how could she not be concerned?" "That's right. Dad, let's force her," Mother-son advised. She looked at Ping. If they stayed here, her son would definitely want to take revenge. Next time, he would not be so lucky. If he really died, there would be no one to send them off. How could they continue living? "Okay, let's go to Chongming Town." Elder son slammed the table angrily. "I'll give up my dignity and force this girl to turn over a new leaf." Jiang Kuai smiled. "If that's the case, then let's depart today. The earlier we get there, the less worried Miss Lu will be." This elder son hesitated. "We have to pack up our belongings." Jiang Kuai waved his hand and smiled. "You'll have everything when you get there. Moreover, leaving the belongings here is also a way out. If you don't feel comfortable living there, you can come back any time. There's no need to waste any effort." "That's right." Ping was afraid that a long delay would bring trouble. He quickly smiled. "With the silver, there's nothing that Chongming Town doesn't have. Moreover, we're going to Sister's house. Why do we need these things? They'll only be a hindrance. Then it's settled. I'll go get the carriage immediately." Jiang Kuai smiled. This was also Shue's idea. As for why Shue did this, he would not ask. Chapter 218. Outside of Chongming Town it was noon, but there was still an endless stream of pedestrians at the town gate. Two young women stood under a willow tree at the town gate. Their faces were covered with a white veil, revealing only their clear eyes. Their fair hands were placed in front of their eyebrows as they looked around. A gust of wind blew. The white veil and the lake green gown fluttered. After looking for a while, they saw an old carriage rushing towards them with two riders beside it. They quickly went over to greet the carriage. Although they had not seen each other for a few years, Ping still recognized Lu at first glance. "Sis." Ping jumped off the horse excitedly and ran towards her with his light body technique. Lu looked at him from top to bottom. Seeing that he was alive and well, she let out a long sigh of relief. She patted her chest and said, "You scared me to death." "Hee hee, I almost died this time. Luckily, Brother Jiang came to save me." Ping squinted his eyes. "Sis, Brother Jiang is good at martial arts, and he looks good. Is he going to be my brother-in-law? Don't talk nonsense." Lu glared at him. "He has a wife. He was just asked to help me. We have only met once. Don't talk nonsense." "I see." Ping sighed disappointedly. The carriage slowly approached them. Lu quickly called out, "Father, Mother." The old couple in the car answered in a muffled voice, "Come in." Bai Lu's body was light. She used her small hands to support herself and jumped onto the carriage. She got into the carriage agilely. Her maid signaled the carriage to continue moving forward while she led the way in front. Jiang Kuai walked in front. He showed his waist tag and entered the town without any obstacles. Ping led the horse. He widened his eyes and looked around greedily. Every place made him excited. The carriage finally came to an alley and stopped in front of a tall gate. "Father, Mother, we are home." Lu lifted the curtain and got off the carriage. Ping stared at the imposing gate. The rows of copper nails on the red lacquered gate were shining. "Sis, is this your house?" "Yes." Lu helped old Sun down the carriage. Let's go in." Jiang Kuai smiled. "Miss Lu, my mission is complete. I will leave first. Goodbye. Brother Jiang, come in and have some tea before you leave," Lu said. Jiang Kuai gave a fist salute and smiled. "Let's call it a day. I'll trouble you another day." He cupped his fists towards the two elders and bade farewell. Ping asked, "Brother Jiang, where can I find you?" "You can look for me at the public house." Jiang Kuai smiled. "We'll meet again another day." With that, he disappeared in front of everyone like a puff of smoke. "Brother Jiang's kung fu is amazing," Ping praised. Lu smiled and helped the two elders to get off the carriage. "Young Master Jiang is really a good person." Madam Sun smiled and said, "Little girl, don't you have any thoughts about him?" "Mother, I told little brother that he has a wife. I'm just here to help my friend. I've only met him once, and I'm not familiar with him." Bai Lu said sternly, "You don't have to worry about him." "Humph." Old Sun glared at her shamelessly. "Who can control you?" Ping suddenly reacted and asked, "Sister, is Brother Jiang from the public house?" Lu supported Sun's mother as they walked inside. The door opened, and four maids walked out. They stepped forward and saluted. Old Sun stepped through the door and felt that his legs were not as agile as before. He could not walk. It was the first time he saw such a big house with such a tall barrier. Lush green flowers and trees, rockery, and spring water. It was a style that he had never seen before. It was an eye-opener for him. His arrogance was inexplicably suppressed. He did not even try to show off his power. Everyone went into a gazebo on a rockery to enjoy the scenery. "This house is so grand." Ping laughed excitedly. "Sister, how much did it cost?" 1,200 taels, Lu said. Ping immediately stuck out his tongue. "Good boy." Lu smiled. "What's your plan for the future?" Ping said, "I want to try Wu-Wei escort agency." He had good kung fu and was an escort before. If he entered Wu-Wei escort agency, he would be able to live well. "No way." Old Sun stared at him. "If it wasn't for young Master Jiang, you'd be dead. Why do you still want to go to an escort agency? You don't even remember. Brother, are your injuries really serious this time?" Sigh. The doctor said that there was no hope. Luckily, young Master Jiang came. "Take a pill, and you'll be cured immediately." Sun's mother shook her head. "Your father and I were scared to death. You have to thank him. He's a kung fu practitioner." Lu frowned and looked at Ping. "Brother, let me tell you something. No violence is allowed in the town. This is the public house's rule. Don't cause trouble. Isn't the public house's rule too strict?" Ping was not convinced. Is it really true that no violence is allowed in Chongming Town? There are public house protectors patrolling. If you use violence, you'll be expelled from Chongming Town. Lu said, "Don't think that you'll be lucky. If you're really expelled, you'll never be able to enter the town again." "That's so cool." Ping curled his lips and laughed. "Sister, Brother Jiang is from the public house. How did you get to know him?" Chief Chu's maid Xue Ling from the public house is learning martial arts from me. Thanks to her, I was able to save you in time. Sis, you owe him a big favor. Ping smiled and said, I took the spirit blessing pill, a unique medicine from the House of High Dukes. As long as you have one breath left, you can be saved. One pill, one life. Lu nodded lightly. Chief Chu has a high position and power. Why don't I plead with Xue Ling to let you enter the public house? Really? Ping's eyes widened. I can enter the public house. Everyone on Chongming Road knew about the public house. There were countless people who wanted to enter the public house, but it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Even though the people from the martial arts sects despised the House of High Dukes and scolded them for being the dogs of the imperial court, once they had the chance to enter the House of High Dukes, they would definitely fight for it with all their might. Lu frowned and thought for a while. Don't be too happy yet. It's hard to say whether it will succeed or not. Sis, my fate is in your hands. Ping grabbed Lu's hand and said excitedly, if I can really enter the public house, then our family will prosper. You can stay at home with your parents and enjoy your life. I heard from Brother Jiang that once you enter the public house, you won't have to worry about money anymore. Lu regretted bringing up this topic. She didn't expect her brother to want to enter the public house so badly. If he failed, she would blame herself to death. Old Sun looked at Lu suspiciously. Stupid girl, can you really let Ping enter the public house? Father, I'll try. Lu said. Old Sun scoffed. You're just a singer. How can you be so shameless? Lu rolled her eyes at Old Sun, helplessly. Mother Sun quickly changed the topic. It was not easy for the family to reunite. She shouldn't make things difficult for them. The next evening, when Lu returned home, Xue Ling, who was wearing a fluttering white robe, followed by her. The backyard was dyed red by the setting sun. Xue Ling sat in the pagoda. Her white robe was spotless, and her face was flawless. Her expression was cold as she looked at Ping from head to toe. Ping felt a little guilty under her cold gaze, and he felt uneasy all over. Lu smiled. Xue Ling, can he do it? His cultivation level is too low. Xue Ling frowned. Didn't you say that his martial arts is not bad? He should be okay? Lu said. Xue Ling shook her head. Another one who likes to brag. He's far from it. Ping suddenly felt dejected. He stood in front of Xue Ling. The cold air was like needles piercing his skin. Her martial arts was really amazing. If they fought, he might not even be able to take a hit. Xue Ling was about the same age as him, and she was a woman. It was really embarrassing. Lu glared at Xue Ling. Xue Ling's expression did not change. She still had a look of disdain on her face. She scoffed. Someone like you wants to enter the public house. Ping was embarrassed. Can't I? If you go in like this, you're really embarrassing me. Xue Ling frowned. Ping became more and more anxious. He looked at his sister for help. Lu said, Can I do odd jobs? Xue Ling shook her head. Look at him. He has never suffered. He doesn't know how to read people's eyes. Odd jobs are also a hindrance. Chapter 219. Lu asked in a low voice, He can't enter the public house. Xue looked at Ping and shook her head. Come with your sister tomorrow and meet Master. Let's see what he thinks. Yes, thank you, Sister Xue. Ping quickly said. Xue waved her hand. Go do what you need to do. Ping hurried out of the room. Watching Ping leave, Lu asked nervously, Xue, he really can't do it. I don't have the final say. Xue said, Master has to see him. As long as he has a good heart, Master will be able to convince him. Although little brother is reckless and impulsive, he is very kind. Lu hurriedly said. Xue rolled her eyes and said, What you say doesn't matter. Master has to see him. Don't worry. I think he is not bad. Lu smiled and shook her head. He always smiles with his sister, but he doesn't dare to say a word in front of you. I'm telling you, if he doesn't listen to me, I will beat him up. Don't worry, Shui said. He might not be able to withstand the restrictions of the public house. Instead of waiting for him to break the public house's rules and get punished, I will beat him up. Do whatever you want. That's good. Does Master Chu have time tomorrow? Lu asked. He is usually very busy, right? A rank 2 chief must have a lot of things to deal with. Yes, he is. He is practicing in isolation. I begged him to come to the East Garden tomorrow. It all depends on your brother's performance. After Xueling left, Ping quickly ran over and pestered Lu. Sister, your friend is too cruel. Why don't we just let it go? Ping carefully looked at Lu. Lu was sitting in a gazebo. The light was bright, making the garden look like it was daytime. Lu's beautiful face looked even more charming under the light. The siblings were sitting in the gazebo. Old Son and his wife were sitting by a fish pond, watching the fish. From time to time, they would toss food into the pond and watch the fish fight for it. Lu frowned and stared at him. Ping shrunk his neck and said, "How did she practice martial arts? She is so young. She is so powerful." Lu scoffed. "You don't want to enter the public house? All right, I'll tell her tomorrow. That will save you a lot of trouble. She won't have to waste her breath pleading for you." No, I'm just complaining," Ping hurried to explain. Bai Lu glared at him in disappointment. "Can't you work harder? Do you think this opportunity is so easy to get?" Yes, I know it's a rare opportunity." Ping nodded hurriedly. "She is already so powerful. What about her son? I'm afraid I'll embarrass myself." "Young Master Chu is still very gentle, like a spring breeze," Lu said. Ping said, That's good. Lu glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "All right, don't be too nervous. Just do what you usually do." "Okay." Ping showed a stiff smile. "Go and train." Lu waved her hand. She knew that nothing she said would change anything. The next morning, after breakfast, Ping was restless. He kept running around the house. Sometimes he would go to practice, but halfway through, he would be in a daze, filled with worry. Sometimes he would go to talk to Old Son, and sometimes he would go to watch the fish. He tried his best not to think too much about it. Bai Lu looked on coldly from the side and did not say anything. After an hour, she brought Ping out of the house. The two of them walked out of the alley and entered the busy street. They walked along the street to the east. Ping looked at the busy people, and his nervous heart slowly calmed down. Chongming Town was indeed Chongming Town. The town of clouds paled in comparison. Everyone was dressed in an elegant manner. Fortunately, his sister had changed clothes for him. Otherwise, people would be able to tell that he was from the countryside. When he arrived at the gate of the public house, he took a deep breath. He stopped looking around to avoid embarrassing himself. In the future, if he could enter the public house, he would look around to his heart's content. They got on a small boat. The lake was clear, and there was a gentle breeze. He did not have the mood to appreciate it. He was only thinking about what kind of person Chief Chu was. The chief of the public house should be a dignified old man or a thin and wise man, but his sister called him young master. Could he be a middle-aged, handsome man? When he saw Shui standing on the island and waving at him, Ping became even more nervous. Lu turned her head to look at her brother and shook her head. When they got off the boat, Ping respectfully gave a fist salute. He did not dare to look at Shui. Lu stepped forward. "Is young Master Chu here?" "I'm here. I'm busy with Senior Li," Xueling said. "Come with me." Lu patted Ping's stiff body and followed Shui to a flower bed. Ping saw two men in the flower bed, bending over to pull weeds. One was as strong as a bear, the other was tall and skinny. Even without looking at their faces, he could feel that they were dignified. The two were talking while pulling weeds. He widened his eyes and looked at the two men. Then he looked at Shue. Could it be that the chief of the public house was one of them? "Young master, they are here." Shue stepped forward and said. Ping saw the two men turn around. One was simple and honest, the other was handsome. "Brother Li, young Master Chu." Lu curtsied. Ping's eyes widened and gave a fist salute. "Come, let's sit and talk." Chu Li smiled and extended his hand. They entered the pagoda. In the corner of the pagoda, a small red clay stove was making a gurgling sound. Shue quickly made tea and served it to everyone. Ping took the teacup with both hands. He was restless. Especially after Shue served the teacup, she stood behind Chu Li. Her bright eyes glanced at him. He felt even more uncomfortable. Shue was standing, so he should not be sitting. Chu Li took a sip of tea and looked at Ping from head to toe. He smiled. "I heard from Brother Jiang that you have a feud with the Startling Cloud Association?" "Yes, Chief. The people from the Startling Cloud Association almost killed me." Ping quickly put down his teacup and said respectfully. "Who did it?" Chu Li asked. "Flaming Sun Palm, Luo Feng. They are really family. Luo Feng is my friend, and I am also good friends with faction leader Chen." Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "How about this? I will be the peacemaker. Find a chance for you two to have a drink and forget about the feud." Ping's eyes widened in shock. Chu Li looked at him with a smile. Lu saw that he was in a daze and pulled his sleeve. Ping thought about it and finally nodded. "All right, I did not lose my life anyway. For the sake of Chief, I will let it go." Chu Li smiled. "Thank you very much. You can stay here and help me from now on. This is Brother Li. When I entered the public house, I was in charge of the East Garden with Brother Li. When I leave, you can take over. Brother Li, please teach him more in the future." "No problem. Leave it to me." Liu patted his chest. Lu pulled Ping's sleeve again. "Hurry up and thank Master Chu." Ping was overjoyed. He quickly stood up and thanked Chu Li. He did not think that it would be so easy to pass the test and become a guard of the public house. Chu Li waved his hand. "Brother Li will explain the rules of the public house to you in detail. You must first go to the public house to learn the rules. After that, you can challenge the ranking tower and see what you are capable of." Ping replied loudly, "Yes, follow me, brother son." Liu smiled and stood up. "I will bring him to the martial arts hall first." Chu Li smiled and nodded. Seeing that they had left, Chu Li also stood up. "Miss Lu, Xueling, you two continue your practice. I will go back first." "Master, it is not easy for you to come out. Don't rush back." Xueling quickly pulled his sleeve. She knew that once Chu Li returned to the courtyard, he would once again dive into the formation and study it day and night. It was rare for him to come out and take a break. Chu Li smiled. "I am busy. Rest for the morning." Xueling said. Lu smiled sweetly. "Let me dance for you, master." She was very grateful to Chu Li. Since then, her younger brother had entered the public house and received such a good job like the East Garden. It was a huge favor. As a woman, she didn't have anything valuable on her, only her beauty and talent. Chapter 220. Master, Sister Lu's dance can only be enjoyed once a month. Xueling laughed. "I'll appreciate it next time if I have the chance." Chu Li smiled and said, "Thank you, Miss Bai Lu. I'll take my leave first." "Master," Xueling said angrily. Chu Li smiled and stood up to leave. Xueling stomped her feet helplessly and sat down heavily. "What is Mr. Chu busy with?" Lu asked regretfully. Why is it so urgent? Practice, practice all day long. Xueling said. No matter how intimate they were, there were some things that couldn't be said casually. She had enough vigilance. Lu laughed. No wonder his martial arts are so powerful. Like me, I will never be able to catch up to him in my lifetime. That's not a good thing. Once he starts practicing martial arts, he'll become obsessed. Xueling sighed and looked listless. No matter how hard I try to persuade him, it's useless. She really could not understand Chu Li's way of doing things. He was already a top-notch, innate master at such a young age. As long as he waited for the opportunity to enter the surpassing state, he would be able to break through and become a grandmaster. Why did he have to work so hard? More importantly, he was already the chief steward. If there was anything he needed to do, he could just give the orders. There was no need for him to do it himself, not to mention the formation. Formations were extremely harmful and could shorten one's lifespan. Lu said, Xueling, I really don't know how to repay Master Chu. Xue smiled and looked at her. Her gaze stopped at her towering breasts. Lu patted her. Xue smiled and said, All right, this matter only requires a word from Master. If you want to repay him, then help me find out more information. He's busy cultivating and doesn't have time to go out. He's also very concerned about what's happening outside. I'll tell him when we're having dinner. Asking for information, Lu smiled and said, That's convenient. The New Moon Brothel has all kinds of information. Find something interesting to tell me. I'll tell him when the time comes. No problem. Chu Li returned to the Gloriesville courtyard and sat in the gazebo. He looked at the rustling green bamboo and quickly fell into deep thought. Formations appeared in his mind one by one. There was a knock on the door, and Su Ru, who was dressed in an apricot gown, pushed the door open and entered. Chu Li remained motionless. Her eyes were blank, and her mind had already wandered off. She shook her head and sighed before gracefully arriving at the gazebo. She pushed his shoulder. Chu Li, Chu Li. Chu Li was startled and woke up. Yang Su has something to say to you. Oh. Chu Li stood up and walked out. How has she been lately? Ever since our son came, she's like a different person. Su Ru smiled. She's always so happy. That's good. Chu Li's thoughts drifted back to the formation. Su Ru saw that the situation was not good and quickly said, Young miss, and I will be leaving soon. Chu Li stopped in his tracks and continued walking. He smiled nonchalantly and asked, When? Maybe only 7 or 8 days, Su Ru said. Chu Li stopped and frowned. Why so sudden? Su Ru said, The situation there has changed. They want us to go there earlier. Chu Li walked forward in silence. If we leave this time, we might not be able to return for several years. With Lady Zhao's level of comprehension, she will soon enter the Grand Master's boundary. No one can say for sure. Su Ru sighed. Lady Zhao wants to delay her departure for a year. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Su Ru continued, But Miss does not have the final say in this matter. It depends on the other side. This is a rare opportunity. Chief should also strive to enter the Grand Master's boundary. Chu Li smiled. Su Ru waved her hand. I don't have that extravagant hope. The Grand Master's boundary is not that easy. Where there is a will, there is a way. Chu Li said, Chief, your opportunity is not bad. It might not be impossible. If something really happens, send me a message immediately. Okay, I will think of a way to send a message. Su Ru smiled. Chu Li slowly nodded and remained silent. The two of them arrived at the Island of Symphony and saw Xiao Qi and Xiao Shi in the gazebo. Chu Li closed fist saluted from afar. Xiao Qi pointed at the small building opposite. Chu Li nodded, indicating that he understood. He closed fist, saluted again, and walked through the sea of flowers to the gazebo alone. Su Ru came to the gazebo. He doesn't look right. What happened? Xiao Qi frowned and looked at her. Su Ru stuck out her tongue. I told him that we are leaving. What nonsense! Xiao Qi frowned. Xiao Shi smiled. Younger sister, I should have told him that you are leaving. A lot of things are pressing on him. We should be prepared. I've told him what I should, Xiao Qi said. She had already told Chu Li the name list of the informants and what to do in the future. It was just that when she wanted to leave, she would be silent. She would not let her heart waver. Xiao Shi said, You are so cruel. Second sister, don't cause trouble, Xiao Qi said impatiently. She looked at Su Ru. What did he say? Su Ru shook her head. Nothing much. Xiao Shi smiled. It's a normal reaction. Xiao Qi glanced at her and looked at the small building. I wonder what Yang Su wanted to say to him. It must be a secret of the imperial family. Xiao Shi said, Uncle Chu. Chu Li stepped onto the second floor, and Zhu Quan rushed over. Chu Li smiled and reached out to catch him. He carried him. Zhu Quan smiled. Uncle Chu, why did you only come to see me now? I have something to tell you. You like it here? I like it. What do you like? The sisters here are all beautiful, and the snacks are delicious. Chu Li carried Zhu Quan into the house. Yang Su was embroidering by the window. The window was open, and the sunlight shone on her body. It was as if she was wearing a layer of soft light. Her expression was peaceful, and her temperament was tranquil. Mother! Zhu Quan struggled out of Chu Li's arms and jumped into Yang Su's arms. Yang Su hugged him and smiled at Chu Li. Master Chu. Chu Li sat opposite her. Miss Yang looks good. I've had a good few days. Yang Su looked at Zhu Quan lovingly. Master Chu, I suddenly thought of something. I think I should tell you. Chu Li nodded. Yang Su said, I've heard of a piece of news before, but I'm not sure if it's true. Chu Li continued to look at her. Yang Su said, I heard that there was a master living in seclusion at the Rising Sun Mountain. The Rising Sun Mountain, Chu Li muttered. Yang Su said, a few masters from the imperial house have visited, but found nothing. Since the masters from the imperial house are interested, it must be someone extraordinary. Who is it? Chu Li asked. I think he's called the Multiform Demon Lord. The Multiform Demon Lord. Chu Li searched for the name in his mind and quickly found it. He was mentioned in 2 books. One was the history of the dynasty, and the other was the chronicles of the martial arts world. The multiform demon Lord was highly skilled in martial arts. What's worse was that his face could change so much that it was impossible to guard against him. He must have cultivated a special skill similar to the bone shrinking technique that could change his appearance. Unfortunately, he went into seclusion in the mountains, and no one knew where he went. This special skill was never seen again. Yang Su asked, Master Chu, do you know? I've heard of him. He's a very powerful person, but that was 300 years ago. I think he's long gone. They want to find the inheritance of the master. Inheritance? Rising Sun Mountain? Chu Li slowly nodded. Thank you, Miss Yang. I'll go and take a look. Yang Su smiled. It's good that I can help. If we can find the multiform demon lord, it'll be a great benefit. Chu Li smiled. No matter what, I have to thank you, Miss Yang. Don't say thank you between us. Yang Su smiled. I'll think about it carefully and find something useful. Chu Li shook his head. Don't waste your brain. There's still a long way to go. Yang Su smiled and nodded. Chapter 221. The Rising Sun Hill was 5,000 miles away from Chongming town. It would take a few days to get there. By the time he returned, Sioqi and Su Ru might have already left the public house. The Rising Sun Mountain was related to the multiform demon lord. Could it be that there really was his inheritance? He did not know about the multiform demon lord's other abilities, but the ability to change his face was strange. If he could obtain it, he would be able to create thousands of clones, and with his omniscient mirror, he could do even more things. He got up from the gazebo and paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. The lake in his heart that had always been calm was turbulent and difficult to calm down. Reluctance, resentment, and melancholy were all mixed together like a mess, making him indescribably irritated. Knock, knock. The courtyard door was pushed open after someone knocked on it. Xiaoqi, who was dressed in white, fluttered in. She slowly walked towards Chu Li. Her jade-like face was right in front of him, and her faint fragrance wafted into his nose. When Xiaoqi saw Chu Li's solemn expression and cold gaze, she felt a little guilty. She explained, "The master from Snow Lunar Pavilion sent a letter. She's injured and needs to go into isolated cultivation. She asked us to hurry over as soon as possible. Once she goes into isolated cultivation, I don't know when she'll come out." Chu Li extended his hand and gestured for her to sit down. He frowned and asked, "Are your injuries serious?" Xiaoqi nodded. Chu Li let out a long sigh. "Everything in this world is hard to achieve. When do we leave?" "I've already sent a letter to ask if there's any way to delay it." Xiaoqi frowned. "If there's no way, I'll probably have to leave in 6 days." 6 days? Chu Li's mouth was full of bitterness, as if he had eaten a bitter pill. Xiaoqi said, "I don't want to tell you in advance so that it won't affect everyone's mood. All good things must come to an end, so we'll part ways one day." Chu Li pondered. 6 days. Xiaoqi looked at him. Chu Li said, "It's almost enough. Since you're still here, I'll set up a formation to hide the Jade Guardian Island. Others won't be able to enter. I'll activate it when you're back." He had long been prepared for this day. Previously, he was only angry at her for hiding it from him. Since she really wanted to leave, he would not stop her. What formation? Disorienting formation and reversing 5 elements formation. Chu Li wanted to copy the Tai Hua Valley's formation and complete it within 6 days. If it were any other formation, he would not have enough time, and its might would be unknown. All right. Xiaoqi could not refuse. Chu Li fell silent. Sioqi opened her mouth, but did not know what to say. The gazebo was silent. A cool breeze blew, and the bamboo forest rustled. Time seemed to freeze at this moment as the two sat facing each other in silence. Bang! Xue Ling suddenly pushed the door open and saw the two people in the pavilion. He hurriedly came in and curtsied. Sioqi waved her hand and hurriedly stood up. "Chu Li, don't force yourself. If you really can't do it, just send second eldest sister away." Chu Li nodded. "I'm leaving." Xiaoqi hurriedly left the courtyard. Xue Ling blinked her bright eyes in confusion. She felt that the third lady's behavior was a little strange, but she did not know what was strange about it. In any case, it was different from usual. "Don't think too much. How is Lu Bai doing?" "Sister Lu has agreed." "That's good. Let's move on to the next step." Chu Li muttered. Xue Ling said excitedly, "All right, take your time. Don't panic." Chu Li said, "Yes, master." Xue Ling was still excited. It was not difficult for Chu Li to stack the two formations, especially after he had thoroughly understood the formation of Tai Hua Valley. 5 days later, he finished setting up the formation. The island of Jade Guardian instantly disappeared from everyone's sight. The original position of the island of Jade Guardian became a calm and clear lake, no different from any other place. Even if a boat passed by, it would not be able to find the island of Jade Guardian. The boat would automatically slide away. The people on the boat would not be able to detect any abnormalities. After personally experiencing Chu Li's formation, Xiao Taiying was amazed. It was indeed a well-known formation. Its power was really amazing. In terms of defense, it was enough to defend against a grandmaster. Xiao Taiying let Zhao Qingshan and the others try to break into the island, but they could not find a way in. According to Xiao Taiying's knowledge, the people who knew about the formation were almost extinct. Even if there were, it would only be in the imperial house, or perhaps in the four major sects. There would not be too many people who knew about it. Now that the House of High Dukes had the protection of the formation, it was standing above the other houses of High Dukes. With the formation alone, it was enough to protect the House of High Dukes. Xiao Taiying's white robe fluttered in the wind. He turned his head and asked with a smile, "Chu Li, can you cover the entire House of High Dukes under the formation?" They stood on the shore of the island of Jade Guardian. They could see the outside clearly. It was no different from before the formation was set up. Chu Li said, "I can, but I want to wait for a while. Give me some time to deepen my knowledge in the art of formation. I want to set up a strong enough formation. One step at a time. Let's set up something like the island of Jade Guardian first." Xiao Taiying could not wait. With the protection of the formation, the House of High Dukes would not need to have a Grandmaster guarding at all times. The original 3 Grandmasters could be mobilized. The strength of the House of High Dukes would increase exponentially. They would be able to hold their heads high. "That's fine." Chu Li said, "Just set it up on the important island. It would be inconvenient to set it up everywhere." Inconvenient is better than dangerous. Set up the formation on every island. Xiao Taiying smiled. "Chu Li, thank you for your hard work." Chu Li nodded helplessly. He was thinking about how to do it faster and more secure. "Master, I want to take a walk outside first. I want to think about it carefully before I start setting up the formation." Chu Li said, "No problem." Xiao Taiying said, "But this must be done as soon as possible." "Okay." Chu Li nodded. He wanted to understand the Tai Hua Valley's formation. The 3 formations stacked together would be even more powerful. If he could understand it, he could copy their formation. It would be enough. The moon was like an ice wheel. The universe was crystal clear. The silhouette of the house could be vaguely seen under the moonlight. Chu Li sat cross-legged on the bed. His breathing was faintly discernible. The house was quiet. He suddenly opened his eyes. In his mind, he saw Shao Qi and Su Ru. They were dressed in plain clothes. Their faces were sallow. It was as if a luminous pearl was wrapped in sand. In addition, the 2 of them were wearing loose clothes that covered their graceful figures, making them inconspicuous in the crowd. They quietly left the stargazing tower. They did not disturb the maids downstairs. They quietly came to a small boat. The boat swayed gently and floated away from the shore. Shao Qi stood at the bow of the boat. Her watery eyes stared in the direction of the Glories-Will courtyard. She did not move. Chu Li sighed. He floated to the shore and stood on top of a tree. The moonlight was like water. It shone on his green robe. Shao Qi could see it clearly. A smile bloomed on her cold face. She waved her hand. Chu Li waved back. Su Ru also saw him. She waved her hand and did not move. Looking at Shao Qi and Su Ru, who gradually disappeared into the night, Chu Li's heart was empty and uncomfortable. Melancholy kept eroding his soul. He suddenly had a strong urge to catch up with them. He wanted to leave with them. However, His rationality suppressed this urge. He watched them leave. The night breeze slowly swept across the lake. It was a little cold when it blew on his face. Chu Li stood motionless on top of the tree. He swayed with the movement of the tree. It was not until dawn that the maids on the island started to move. He floated down the tree and returned to the small courtyard. Shui was already cultivating. When she saw him coming back, she was about to say something. Chu Li waved his hand and went straight into the house. Shui saw that his expression was not right. She thought hard but could not figure out why he was unhappy. Chu Li lay on the bed for a while. He quickly controlled his emotions. He regained his rationality and returned to normal. When they were eating, Chu Li said, "I'll go out tomorrow. Lady Xiao and Chief Su have already left the island. You must keep it a secret." Shui suddenly understood. She quietly looked at Chu Li's expression. Chu Li pretended not to know. He wanted to go to the Rising Sun Mountain to see if he could gain anything. Other people went to the Rising Sun Mountain and found nothing. He might not. Once the omniscient mirror was activated, he could see everything within a 5-mile radius. He could even see up and down. The vision of the omniscient mirror was like a ball. Chapter 222. Rising Sun Mountain was a towering mountain range that stretched for hundreds of miles. Chu Li stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the majestic mountain range. He frowned. He found that his omniscient mirror was ineffective. Rising Sun Mountain was shrouded in an invisible force, blocking the omniscient mirror's observation. It was just like Tai Hua Valley, shrouded in a formation. Rising Sun Mountain actually had a formation. He had never heard of it. No wonder people could not find anything when they stepped into the mountain. A formation that shrouded a mountain range was not something an ordinary person could break. They could even fall into the formation without knowing it. Chu Li could not break the formation in front of him and sighed. Before he came, he went to the Temple of Autumn and set up a formation. He tried his best, but could only cover 2 miles of the Temple of Autumn. He could not protect the entire Star Bamboo Peak. Fortunately, the Temple of Autumn was far away from the hustle and bustle. The Star Bamboo Peak was very far away from the city. The disciples of the temple were self-sufficient. They planted vegetables and fields behind the temple. They did not need to go outside to buy things. They avoided the vanity of the world and focused on studying Dharma. He only needed to go back once a year and bring back daily needs that could not be self-sufficient to make up for the last weakness. The disciples of the Temple of Autumn did not need to leave the mountain gate. If someone wanted to deal with the Temple of Autumn, they would not be able to find a weakness. Unless he found another formation master, he could break the formation he set. If there was a change in the formation, he would sense it and rush back immediately in order to ensure the safety of the Temple of Autumn. Chu Li racked his brains and did everything he could. Standing at the foot of Rising Sun Mountain, Chu Li frowned not only because of the formation. There was a faction on the peak opposite Rising Sun Mountain. There was a building complex halfway up the mountain. There were 3 main halls, and the rest were continuous pavilions. The main hall was written with the words Rising Sun Faction. Through Chu Li's observation, there were 2 grandmasters in the Rising Sun Faction. If it was a first-rate faction like Snow Lunar Pavilion or Green Hill or even Tai Hua Valley, he would not be too surprised to have 2 grandmasters. However, this Rising Sun Faction was unknown in the martial arts world. Almost no one knew about it. There were actually 2 grandmasters at the same time. This was a little unusual, and there was an inexplicable feeling to it. With these 2 grandmasters around, he could not fully focus on breaking the formation. Once immersed in the formation, he needed to focus. His reaction to the outside world would be slow, and he would not be as sharp and powerful as usual. He stood at the foot of the mountain and pondered, trying to think of a way to break the formation. However, he was at a loss. It was far beyond what he had learned. The Tao of formation was profound and profound. Even though his wisdom and knowledge far surpassed that of the people of this world, he still felt that he was insignificant and had to seek it arduously. It was even more profound than practicing martial arts. Formations were related to the way of nature, just like the modern cosmology and philosophy that he had reincarnated from. It was a study that he could never reach the end of even if he exhausted his entire life. He had only read 6 books on formations. With his limited knowledge, he had no idea what kind of a ray formation this was. He had never even seen one before. He had the omniscient mirror, which gave him a huge advantage in deciphering formations, but he was helpless against formations that he had never seen before. The sky was like his thoughts. Dark clouds gradually gathered, and soon a gale arose. Heavy snow fell like cotton, swirling in the wind. The weather here was different from Chongming town. It was still the end of autumn there, but it was already winter here. Heavy snow fell and dyed the world white in an instant. He floated into the rising sun sect and silently entered a woodshed. He sat on the couch and observed the entire rising sun sect. The main hall of the rising sun sect was lit by tallow candles. There were 2 old men sitting in the main hall, chatting while drinking tea. There was an old man with a round and chubby face. His complexion was rosy, and he looked like a rich man. The other old man was skinny and cold. His face was like stone and expressionless. The chubby old man looked out of the main hall and sighed. "Brother, another year has passed. We are 1 year older. When can we return to Fairy's capital?" The skinny old man looked gloomy and only lowered his head to drink tea. "If this goes on, I guess we will have to rely on this place for the rest of our lives." The chubby old man shook his head and sighed. "I really can't accept it." "What's the use of not accepting it?" The skinny old man said coldly. "The emperor's order has been given. No one can disobey it. I always felt that someone deliberately spread rumors to fool us." The chubby old man scoffed. "The multiform demon, Lord, is not here at all. 10 years. How many decades do we have in this lifetime? If we can't find the multiform demon Lord, we won't be able to go back in another 10 years. That minister, Li, is also useless. He can't break the formation himself, so he asked us to guard it." The chubby old man curled his lips and said disdainfully, "He even calls himself the number 1 formation master in the imperial house. He is the only one in the imperial house who knows about formations. Of course, he is number 1. The skinny old man said, "I heard that the Tempest Temple also has a formation master. We must find the multiform demon Lord's abode before they do." "Brother, I've seen through it." The chubby old man scoffed. "The emperor asked us to guard here, not to get the multiform demon Lord's abode, but to stir **T. He doesn't want the Tempest Temple to get it. The Tempest Temple doesn't seem interested in the multiform demon lord. They don't seem interested. Who knows what's going on?" It's almost the night of the full moon. The skinny old man looked out of the main hall and sighed. "This time, I'll go in and take a look." The chubby old man chuckled. Who would have thought that there would be an entrance to this formation every night of the full moon? "We're just lucky. Who asked us to have so many people?" The skinny old man shook his head. There were hundreds of people in the Rising Sun faction. They patrolled around the Rising Sun Mountain every day. Coincidentally, the patrolling disciples found something strange. They followed the clues and found out about a secret of the Rising Sun Mountain. This huge formation would have an entrance every night of the full moon. However, it would only last for a few breaths. After a few breaths, the entrance would disappear. This was a flaw that almost couldn't be discovered. Since they saw it, it could only be said that it was God's will. They only found out about this secret through all kinds of coincidences. The two of them didn't report it, as they wanted to make a great contribution. After a year, they sent people in, but found nothing. Not only did they not find anything, but they also lost more than 20 disciples. No one knew if they were alive or dead. This made everyone in the Rising Sun faction anxious. If this continued, the morale of the people would collapse, and the faction would collapse. The skinny old man decided to go in personally this time. "Senior brother, let's go together," the round-faced old man said. "In case something happens, we can take care of each other. Someone has to suppress them outside." The skinny old man shook his head. "Now, the morale of the people is unstable. Without someone to suppress them, these disciples will run away." "That won't be necessary." The round-faced old man smiled. "If we go in personally, they can be at ease." "What if someone else comes?" The skinny old man snorted. The round-faced old man thought about it and sighed. "Senior brother, forget it. No one knows what's going on inside. Even we are very weak in the face of the formation. Life and death are up to fate." The skinny old man said, "I'm also tired of staying in this place. If I can't get out, report it to the higher-ups immediately." "Senior brother, I think we should report it directly to the higher-ups." The round-faced old man frowned. "We can't involve you." Chapter 2:23. Getting nothing is better than losing our lives. Brother, we're not young anymore. We should cherish our lives more. If we really find the multiform demon lord's cave, we can enjoy the rest of our lives with this technique. It's not that easy. Don't be too greedy. We should have reported it long ago. Brother, you're regretting it, right? A little. The round-faced elder sighed. If we had reported it earlier, there wouldn't be so many people. Even if we reported it, we still need people to go in and explore. We still need them to go in. These disciples are our painstaking efforts. They're all unfilial disciples. The skinny elder said coldly, "They're impetuous and can't be trained. Don't expect them to have any future. Once we leave, they'll disperse. None of them can hold up the sect. Brother, if we get the multiform demon lord's inheritance and let them practice it, do you think they'll become capable?" "Forget it." Both of them were silent again. The inheritance of the multiform demon lord was a huge temptation to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hidden the news and lost more than 20 disciples. Everyone thought of the multiform demon lord as a man with 1,000 faces and felt that he was full of changes. However, as protectors of the imperial house, they knew more. The multiform demon lord's greatest strength was his martial arts. He had taken the lives of at least 5 grandmasters. If they could practice his heart technique, they could laugh at the world. "It's decided. I'll go in this time," the skinny elder said in a deep voice. The round-faced elder sighed and nodded slowly. Chu Li sat quietly in the woodshed and activated the omniscient mirror to the extreme to see what they were thinking. The multiform demon lord that the emperor was obsessed with was not an ordinary person. If he really got the inheritance of the multiform demon lord, he could change his appearance. With his omniscient mirror, he could do a lot of things. The next night, the snow had not melted. A bright moon hung in the sky. The white snow reflected the moonlight, illuminating the surroundings clearly. All the disciples of the Rising Sun faction came to the foot of the Rising Sun mountain and walked around it. They kept walking and patrolling. They all widened their eyes and became more and more nervous as the midnight approached. They all knew that the entrance would appear at midnight and disappear in a flash. If he missed it, he could only wait for next month. This time, their sect leader had personally entered to save their senior and junior brothers. This made them feel a little touched, but they were also a little worried. They did not know if those who had entered were still alive. The fat old man and the skinny old man stood quietly on the glazed tiles of the main hall, looking at the rising sun mountain opposite them. Under the moonlight, their purple robes fluttered. Once the disciples found the entrance, they would shoot whistling arrows. They immediately rushed over and were just barely able to make it. The two of them stood silently on the glazed roof tiles. They had said everything they needed to say. Bang! An explosion came from afar, and a firework appeared in the sky. Let's go! The two of them turned into two gusts of wind and headed in that direction. Chu-Li floated out of the woodshed and suddenly disappeared. The two Rising Sun sect disciples widened their eyes and looked up at the fireworks in the sky, hoping that their sect master would come over as soon as possible. Beside them, a piece of grayish-brown grass appeared in the middle of the lush forest. Completely different from its surroundings, it was abrupt and dazzling. This was the entrance. From the corner of their eyes, they seemed to catch a glimpse of a black shadow that flashed by. Turning his head to take a look, there was nothing at all. It seemed to be an illusion. They looked at each other, shook their heads, and ignored him. Chu-Li stepped into the formation. Suddenly, there was a vast expanse of whiteness in front of him, as if he was shrouded in fog. Activating the omniscient mirror, he saw that he was at the foot of the mountain. The mountain in front of him was completely different from the mountains seen outside. At the foot of the mountain was grayish-brown grass and dense woods. Further up, halfway up the mountain, it was a vast expanse of white snow. This was a snowy mountain that was twice as tall and twice as large as the Rising Sun Mountain. Under the moonlight, the snowy mountain was like a silver mountain. Its entire body was snow-white and flawless, awe-inspiring. There was no formation here. It was pure night fog. He did not care if there was someone coming in behind him. He floated towards the top of the mountain, activating the omniscient mirror to see inside and outside of a 5-mile radius. He was glad that he was lucky. This formation only had one layer, unlike the formation he saw in Taihua Valley, which had layers upon layers of layers. This formation only had the effect of concealing one's tracks. Outsiders could not enter the snowy mountain, but it left a chance for people to enter by chance. This stance was very much like a fated person entering, and those who were not could not enter. Thinking of this, he could not suppress his excitement, and his figure became faster and faster. He floated, and along the way, he met more than 20 Rising Sun sect disciples. They gathered together and found a cave to squat. Some were cultivating, some were cooking, and some were sleeping. Looking at their rosy faces, they seemed to be living well. Chu-Li avoided them and continued to go up until he reached the top of the mountain. It was cold at the top of the mountain, and the air was thin. The cold wind blowing on his face was like a knife cutting his flesh, and a breath almost immediately froze him. He had the sentient menace to protect his body, so he was not affected by the cold and heat. After he reached the top of the mountain, he climbed over the top of the mountain, and there was a cliff that looked like a vertical sword. He glided down the cliff lightly. After 20 meters, he punched out fiercely, and his figure stopped. His fist broke through a thick layer of snow, and suddenly a cave entrance was revealed. He floated into it, and inside was a rather spacious cave. The cave was as tall as a person, and the surrounding walls were made of ice. Inside the cave, there was a gentle breeze blowing, and he inexplicably shivered. This breeze was a bit colder than the wind at the top of the mountain outside. If it was not for the circulation of his inner energy, his flesh and blood would not be able to withstand this cold wind, and he would be frozen. This wind was obviously strange. He looked through the omniscient mirror and saw that the wind entered from the opposite stone wall, circled a few times, and blew here. It weakened the wind, but it became even colder. He ignored this unusually cold wind, and with the protection of the sentient menace, coupled with his thick inner energy, he could withstand it for a while. He looked up at the middle-aged man, sitting cross-legged on the ice couch. This middle-aged man was handsome, and his face was like jade. He must have been a handsome man when he was young. He sat motionless on the crystal-clear ice couch, as if he was meditating. This person seemed to be alive, but he was already dead. The wind here was extremely strange, so the middle-aged man's flesh did not rot and looked the same as when he was alive. The omniscient mirror scanned every inch of the place. In the cave, there was an ice couch, an ice table, 2 bowls, an iron pot, and some unspoiled food and spices piled in the corner. This was the place to live. He was a little disappointed. There were no books, and there were no formations. It seemed that the person in front of him was not a formation master, and might have been set up by someone else. His gaze finally fell on a gap between the ice, and there was a crystal-clear waist tag. It was the size of a palm, and it was about the same size as the white jade tag on his waist. This waist tag was crystal clear, and it blended with the ice. If it was not for the omniscient mirror, he would have to remove all the ice to find it. He took out the modesty sword and lightly stabbed the waist tag like a knife cutting through tofu and flicked it. The waist tag flew out and fell into his hand. Boom! His vision suddenly went black, and he entered the endless void. It was like the first light of dawn, blue and slightly bright. In the void sat a giant that was emitting a soft light, and his face was kind, and his eyes were compassionate, looking down at him. When his eyes met this compassionate gaze, Chu Li's mind was shocked again. Countless scenes appeared in his mind, as if he was looking at flowers on horseback. He suddenly became a soldier, fighting on the battlefield, and in the end his arm was cut off, and he died with a knife through his heart. Suddenly, he became a martial arts master, fighting with others, and in the end, he was defeated and died. Suddenly, he became an old man, not knowing any martial arts, old and weak, and died of illness. It felt like a long time, but it also felt like it was only a moment. Chu Li was refreshed, and he woke up. In front of him was still the soft light giant. Chapter 224. Chu Li met her gaze, and his mind gradually drifted away. He was on the Jade Guardian Island. The lake breeze was gentle, and the flowers were fragrant. He and Xiao Qi were sitting in a gazebo. Xiao Qi was dressed in a snow-white robe. Her bright eyes were like autumn water, reflecting his figure. At this moment, he forgot everything. Chu Li stared at her blankly. He had a strong urge to hold her in his arms. As soon as this impulse appeared, he lost his usual restraint and directly reached out to grab her. Instantly, a delicate fragrance wafted into his arms, and a soft and light body pressed against him. Her jade-like face was right in front of him, and the breath she exhaled was as fresh as orchids. Chu Li hugged her soft body. It was as if he had the world. Ecstasy surged like a tide and swallowed him. He wanted to howl at the sky and sing a song. He could no longer restrain the strong urge. He lowered his head to kiss her delicate pale pink lips. His lips were cold as ice. His originally soft body suddenly became as stiff as stone. He looked down and saw that Xiao Qi's clear eyes were closed. Her face was purple, and she was no longer breathing. What he held in his arms was her cold and stiff corpse. The ecstasy disappeared. He was grief-stricken, and used the eclipse prolonging technique. The thunder rolled down as if it wanted to destroy everything. Chu Li carried Shao-Chi and hid in the martial arts hall. The copper tower had blocked the lightning, but he knew that he would not be able to escape from the heavenly thunder. The life and death scripture had saved him last time, so he would not die this time. However, under the eclipse prolonging technique, Shao-Chi did not wake up. Her delicate body was still stiff and cold, and she was no longer breathing. He already knew that Shao-Chi would not wake up. He had completely lost her. He roared at the sky and flew out of the martial arts hall with Shao-Chi in his arms. A thick bolt of lightning struck down. The huge Z in the sky was reflected in his mind. The scene in his mind stopped at this moment, and his body instantly turned into ashes. He had no end and no beginning. He had no thoughts and turned into silence and eternity. It felt like a long time, but it also felt like a moment. Chu Li slowly woke up. He was still standing in the void. There was no Shao-Chi, no lightning, and he was not on the Jade Guardian Island. What a dream! At this moment, he was abnormally calm, without sorrow or joy. Without any worries, his heart was lively and free and unrestrained. The giant sitting cross-legged in the void had already closed his eyes, as if he was meditating, not moving at all. Chu Li suddenly threw his head back and laughed. His laughter shattered the void in front of him. The giant slowly collapsed and turned into characters. These characters formed a zigzag lightning bolt that instantly struck his forehead. Boom! Golden lights flashed in front of his eyes. He fainted. When he slowly woke up, he found himself sitting cross-legged on the ice couch in the same posture as the middle-aged man. He floated down from the bed and suddenly stopped. The world seemed to have suddenly become different. The feeling of stepping into the Xiantian realm appeared again. The barrier between him and the world had been broken. The world inside his body and the world outside his body had merged into one. He had become one with nature. As if he had understood something, he lightly punched out. Chi! With a light whistling sound, the fist energy burst out of his body. It hit the ice wall at the side with a pa sound, and a white mark appeared on the ice wall. Putting aside the power of this punch, the key was that the inner force had left his body. The Grandmaster's boundary. He looked down at the crystal-clear waist tag. When he touched it again, he felt nothing. It was just a waist tag made of a strange material. It was unusually cold to the touch, as if it was colder than ice. He had actually stepped into the Grandmaster's boundary with this waist tag. Joy came from the heavens. It was nothing more than this. He returned to his senses and looked inside. The giant sitting cross-legged appeared in the void of his mind again. It was motionless, as if it had been sitting there forever. Chu Li's mind circulated several heart techniques. He picked a heart technique and read it again. The giant slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was calm and emotionless. He stood up and slowly practiced each movement. There were a total of 81 movements, and each incantation was matched with 9 movements. The heavenly demonic power. It was different from the orthodox heart technique of inner force. The body moved while the heart was calm, and the body moved while the heart was still. He opened his eyes and moved according to the movements of the giant in his mind. At the same time, the incantation circulated in his mind. A strange force was injected into his body from the void. It was unbearably hot, as if he was in a furnace. As he continued to move, streams of force were continuously injected into his body. It was getting hotter and hotter. He endured the burning pain and did not stop moving. When he finished 36 movements, even with the suppression of the omniscient mirror, his body stopped on its own. His whole body was drenched in sweat. As soon as he sweated, it immediately turned into ice. Along with the sweat, there was also a black, oily substance. In just a moment, his whole body was frozen by black ice. He shook it lightly, and the black ice broke. His whole body was light as if he was flying. It was as if he had gone through another round of cleansing. His physique was greatly strengthened. His body and spirit seemed to be more in sync. He could move freely, and the feeling of being able to control his body floated in his mind. He could even control the movement of his hair and the opening and closing of his sweat pores. He suddenly had an idea. The giant in his mind stretched out his left hand, and his palm slowly became bigger. He practiced the heavenly demonic power again. It was as if he was doing 36 movements in a furnace. It was painful. When he stopped and looked down, his left palm was bigger than usual. Sure enough, he could change it at will. He tried with his right hand again, and it became smaller. His body became flexible, and he continued experimenting tirelessly. He could change his height, weight, and even his face, but he couldn't change it too subtly. He could only lengthen or shorten it, or make it wider or thinner. The shape of his face changed slightly, and the position of his facial features changed. It was as if he was a different person. Even if he was in front of him, he would not be able to recognize him. After practicing the heavenly demonic power several times, there was a faint force in his body. It was like inner energy, but different from inner energy. It was erratic and faintly discernible. The strange thing was that this force did not exist in his dantian, but in his heart. He pressed the ice table lightly. The table was unharmed, but the ground made a muffled bang, and a white mark appeared. The heavenly demonic inner energy was formless and changed at will. It was formless and changed at will. This was the real supreme heavenly demon. He glanced at the cave, and with a wave of his sleeve, the broken black ice on the ground turned into powder and disappeared. Another heart technique circulated in his mind. The heavenly demonic void light body technique. The force in his heart activated the heavenly demonic void light body technique. His body gradually faded as if it had merged with the air and turned into a light mist that drifted away. The rising sun faction was shrouded in depression. The disciples all whispered and moved cautiously for fear of making too much noise. In the evening, Sun Xiaoyang came out of the main hall and returned to his room. He let out a long sigh of relief and threw himself on the couch. His whole body felt like it was falling apart. Master really seemed to have changed into a different person. His usually smiling face was so gloomy that it could snow, and his eyes were cold and scary. Standing next to Master, he did not even dare to breathe. His heart was always in his throat for fear of angering Master. There was no news from Master's uncle since he went in. Master's mood was extremely bad. He was also worried about Master's uncle and junior brothers. There had been no news for almost a year. He did not know how they were doing inside, and whether they were alive or not. Unfortunately, he was incompetent. After practicing martial arts for more than 10 years, he was still lingering in the acquired realm. He was the eldest senior brother of the Rising Sun faction. He had the best aptitude and the most hope to enter the innate realm. However, the result was disappointing to Master and Master's uncle. No matter how much he practiced, he could not enter the innate realm. The more anxious and the harder he practiced, the more he felt that the innate realm was out of reach. Every time he saw Master's disappointed eyes, his heart felt like it was being pierced by a needle. If he could use 50 years of his life to enter the innate realm, he would not hesitate. As long as he could enter the innate realm, he would do anything. Sun Xiaoyang! Suddenly, A voice sounded. Sun Xiaoyang sat up abruptly and reached for his sword. Who is it? He saw a young man in a blue shirt sitting by the table. He looked heroic and looked at him with a faint smile. Who are you? Sun Xiaoyang pointed his sword at him. Chu Li said lightly, You want to enter the innate realm? Chapter 2:25. Sun Xiaoyang stared at Chu Li vigilantly. Chu Li stared into Sun Xiaoyang's eyes and smiled. Do you want to enter the innate mastery's boundary and become an innate master? Sun Xiaoyang frowned. Chu Li said, Sun Xiaoyang, the eldest senior of the Rising Sun faction. Who are you? I'm just a passerby, but we can make a deal. What deal? Sun Xiaoyang became more vigilant. Chu Li said, I'll help you enter the innate mastery's boundary, and you'll help me by becoming my eyes and ears. The time limit is 10 years. Eyes and ears. Sun Xiaoyang frowned. What do you want? I won't go against the heavens, and I won't harm your master or martial uncle. Chu Li said, Your two masters will leave eventually. If you stay in the Rising Sun faction in the future, then let the Rising Sun faction help me gather information. If you follow your masters back to the fairies' capital, then help me gather information about the fairies' capital. What news? Major events in the world of martial artists, minor events, rumors and secrets in the palace, rumors in the marketplace, and changes in the bureaucracy are all allowed. There are no limits. Aren't you afraid that I'll fool you? If you're trying to fool me, then we'll cancel our deal. I don't like to force others. Sun Xiaoyang frowned and looked at him. How could there be such a good thing? He didn't seem to have sacrificed anything. Chu Li said, If you enter the fairies' capital because of your master, the information that you think is useless will be very important to me. This is where your value lies. Sometimes a piece of information can save a life. Who are you? Sun Xiaoyang asked. Chu Li tossed the white jade waist tag to him. Sun Xiaoyang took it and looked at it. He raised his head and said, Public House's rank. Chu? Chu Li said, Chief of the Public House. Chu Li. Sun Xiaoyang had heard some general knowledge from his master. He knew that the existence of the House of High Dukes was only inferior to the imperial family. It could be said to be a colossus. A rank 2 chief was definitely an important person, an existence that Sun Xiaoyang had to look up to. Although he had a Grand Master as his master, he was only an acquired master. Thinking of this, he said in a deep voice, Can you really help me enter the innate realm? Chu Li smiled. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. You can think about it for one night. I'll come back tomorrow. Wait, Sun Xiaoyang hurriedly said as he sheathed his sword. 10 years. Chu Li said, 10 years of information in exchange for an innate master. Do you think it's worth it? You really won't harm my master? Sun Xiaoyang was still a little worried. Chu Li waved his sleeves, and the door was immediately opened, letting in a gust of cold wind. He waved his sleeve again. The door was closed again. A Grand Master, Sun Xiaoyang exclaimed. Chu Li said, Do you think I would have to resort to other methods to harm your master? Sun Xiaoyang widened his eyes and looked at him in disbelief. Such a young grandmaster was simply a peerless genius. His future was limitless. Moreover, he was also the chief of the public house. He was definitely a top-notch figure. Even his own master could only concede defeat. He looked about the same as himself, but he was already a grandmaster, while he was still an acquired master. An intense unwillingness surged in his heart like a raging wave. He completely let down his guard. The grandmasters were trying to harm him. There was no need for him to play any tricks at all. He could kill him with a single palm strike. He did not need to play any tricks to deal with his master either. He was the rank 2 chief of the public house. There were many grandmasters in the public house. It would be easy for him to kill an imperial house protector who was sent here. I promise you, Sun Xiaoyang said. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Very well, then let's start now. Sun Xiaoyang asked excitedly, what do I need to do? Meditate, relax your mind, get rid of all distracting thoughts, and focus your mind. Chu Li said, I will help you. Sun Xiaoyang sat cross-legged on the bed. He began to meditate. When his breath was calm and his breathing was slow and long, Chu Li approached him and pressed his thumb in between his eyebrows. A moment later, he withdrew his thumb and floated away. In the afternoon, Shui and Lu sat in the gazebo of the East Garden and drank tea. Shui held the teacup and stared at the clear lake in a daze. Both of them were dressed in pale blue robes with wide sleeves and waists. They were lightly tied with belts. Their slender waists were exposed. They were strong and graceful, valiant and heroic. Why are you in a daze? Lu smiled. Are you thinking about your master? No, Shui quickly said. Lu said with a smile. Shui blushed and quickly said, I was thinking about how the sisters who redeemed themselves at the New Moon brothel are doing. Are any of them having a bad time? There are bound to be good and bad. Lu nodded lightly and sighed. Men are all like that. When they are in a good relationship, they say sweet words and pledge their undying love. Once time passes, they are like a different person. Women are afraid that they will lose their beauty when they get older. Shui sighed. She was secretly glad that she had consumed the nightmare flower and would always be beautiful. Isn't that so? Lu nodded lightly. When it came to age, she could not help but worry. She was very afraid of the sword of time. No matter how beautiful you are, time is merciless. It will eventually turn you into an old woman that no one would spare a second glance at. Shui smiled. I'm not afraid. You? Lu shook her head and smiled. Sister Shui, you are still young. You don't know the fear of growing old day by day and not being able to fight back. When you are the same age as me, you will understand. Sister, have you heard of the nightmare flower? Of course. Lu smiled. That is a sacred item for women. Shui Ling smiled and said, I've eaten a nightmare flower before. Lu's eyes widened. You have consumed the nightmare flower? Shui smiled and nodded. Lu grabbed her hand. Sister, do you have the nightmare flower? I don't. Shui smiled, but Master does. Lu let go of her hand again and sighed. I am so envious of your luck, sister. How about I ask Master for one for you? Shui said. Lu's eyes brightened, but then dimmed. She sighed. I cannot accept a reward without doing anything. It is too valuable. I cannot accept it. Why not? Shui smiled. In Master's eyes, the nightmare flower is just an ordinary flower. It is not that valuable. How is that possible? Lu shook her head and laughed. Just one is enough to make any woman go crazy. Shui smiled. Master's standards are very high. He will not be interested in ordinary women. He will not even touch them. Don't be shy. When Master comes back, I will ask for one for you. I really cannot. Lu quickly waved her hand. I don't want Master Chu to think that I am greedy. Sister, you're treating me like an outsider. Shui Ling smiled. Master Chu is generous to you, but I am not related to him. Lu shook her head. This is not appropriate. Shui tilted her head and smiled. Then, who do you want to be to Master? Lu reached out her hand to tickle Shui, while Shui evaded with a giggle. The two girls were playing around. Li Yu was weeding with Ping in the garden. When he heard their bell-like laughter, he shook his head and smiled. Ping said, Brotherly, let's take a break. What do you mean You are not so delicate. Liu scoffed. Don't think of slacking off. Do your work. Sigh. I want to train. There is plenty of time for you to train. Let's get rid of the weeds first. Liu said. Did Master Chu do this before? He works harder than I do. All right, let's get to work. Ping sighed weakly. Liu smiled. This little guy liked to play tricks and was lazy. He did not look like he would have a bright future. He was similar to Liu. He probably could not become a protector and could only be a scribe. Sister Lu, which sister is not doing well? I heard that Sister Hong Xiu did not have any children after she got married. She must have been bullied by her mother-in-law. Let's go and take a look tomorrow. She is in the city. It is good to take a look. Chapter 226. On the evening of the second day, Xueling and Bai Lu arrived in front of a magnificent mansion. Xueling knocked on the shiny brass door knocker. A small door opened, and a middle-aged man poked his head out. Who are you looking for? Is this the Zhao residence? Xueling said coldly. Does Miss Hongxiu live here? Madam, the middle-aged man said, why are you looking for her? We are her sisters. Please inform her. Xueling took out a visiting card from her sleeves and handed it over. The gatekeeper took it and said, please wait for a moment, and closed the small door. Xueling looked at the door and said, this field officer, Zhao seems to be very rich. A field officer was a small official in the city who was responsible for arresting thieves. It was similar to the captain of the criminal police in the future. It was not a high position, but not a low one. Logically, he would not have so much money to buy such a big mansion. He should be from a rich family, Bai Lu said. The two of them discussed for a while, and the door opened with a squeak. A graceful young woman in silk clothes stood at the door and looked at them with a smile. She came out and greeted them. Sister Bai Lu, Sister Xueling. Behind her, the four maids in colorful clothes followed her out and surrounded her. Bai Lu and Xueling greeted, and the young woman in silk clothes quickly helped them up. She smiled and said, come in and talk. She was beautiful and elegant. She was the former lady of the New Moon brothel, Hong Xiu. At this moment, she was full of joy, and her smile was like a flower. When she first entered the New Moon brothel, her parents died, and she had no relatives. She sold herself to bury her parents. The owner of the New Moon brothel pitied her and took her in. She usually felt lonely. She was envious of others who had parents and siblings. Suddenly, her companions from the New Moon brothel came to visit her. She felt especially warm and happy. The three of them entered the door and went around the screen. They passed through 3 moon doors from the side of the hall and came to the back garden. The autumn wind was chilly and the chrysanthemums were blooming. The 3 of them sat in the pagoda. There were maids brewing tea. They ate fruits and chatted happily. We should greet Madam first. Bai Lu smiled. Hong Xiu waved her hand and smiled. She went to Uncle's house. Oh, Lu was surprised. Why did he leave? Maybe you think I'm an eyesore. Hong Xiu smiled bitterly. Who asked me to be so sinful and to end the Zhao family's lineage? It's not like your husband is the only one in the Zhao family. Lu said, isn't there still your uncle? So, she went to live with first uncle. Hong Xiu shook her head and said, I am unfilial. It seems that I have driven away my mother-in-law. What about your husband? Lu said, he won't be angry with you too, right? Hong Xiu smiled. He is fine. That's good. Lu said, I heard that brother-in-law doesn't treat you as well as he used to. He is filial to his mother. There is no other way. Hong Xiu said, I do not blame him. That's good. Lu nodded her head lightly. Our relationship is still there. Then I won't wrongly follow him. Hong Xiu pulled Bai Lu's hand. Bai Lu, if you follow my precept, you should redeem yourself as soon as possible. Don't wait until you are older to marry. It's still too early for me. Lu smiled. Xueling said, Sister Hong Xiu, brother-in-law didn't bully you, right? When a husband and wife are together, there are not many who treat each other with respect. It is inevitable that we will quarrel. Hong Xiu said, I will also anger him. Although he is a martial arts practitioner, he has never hit me. It seems that brother-in-law is a good person. Xueling smiled. What is his official position now? Field officer. His official position is not high. He is busy all day long. Hong Xiu shook her head and smiled. When he gets home, he will be exhausted. Then we should change brother-in-law's official position. Xueling said. Hong Xiu smiled. He is already very lucky to be able to be an official. He is straightforward and does not know how to flatter others. He is not liked by his superiors. I see. Xueling nodded her head gently. Lu said, Xueling, do you have any ideas? There is no other way. The House of High Dukes and the Town Defense Prefecture are not allowed to collude. Master has warned me before. Xueling spread her hands. Hong Xiu's bright eyes turned, and she smiled. Which master? The chief of the House of High Dukes, Master Chu Li. Lu said, Chief Chu Li. Hong Xiu was surprised. Your name is well known. I often heard from my husband that Chief Chu Li is a genius. At such a young age, he is already rank 2. He is the fastest to be promoted in the House of High Dukes. Lu smiled. Chief Chu Li is indeed a genius. It seems that Sister Hong Xiu did not suffer much. The sisters are relieved. It is still okay. Hong Xiu sighed. We are a group of weak women. We are really lonely and have no one to rely on. It is okay to suffer a little. Xueling said, Why can't Sister Hong Xiu have children? I shouldn't have asked this, right? Hong Xiu shook her head bitterly. The doctor said that my body is weak. He can't see anything else. I can only slowly recuperate. It is useless to take medicine all day long. Come to the House of High Dukes another day. Xueling said, Master has a good relationship with High Official Gua from the 100 Herb Courtyard. I will ask Elder Gua to take a look at you. Okay. Hong Xiu quickly agreed. She was about to go crazy. Without children, she would have no one to rely on for the rest of her life. When she and her husband were old, they would not even have someone to take care of them. She used to like to go shopping and join in the fun. Now, she did not go out all day. She cooped herself up at home. When she saw other people's children on the street, her heart would be in pain. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, she would grab it. They had endless things to talk about. When the lanterns were lit, Xueling and Lu did not stay for dinner. They said goodbye and left. They agreed that Hong Xiu would go to the House of High Dukes tomorrow. Not long after they left, Hong Xiu's husband, Field Officer Zhao, returned home. Field Officer Zhao was handsome and tall. He entered the living room and sat down. Hong Xiu personally served him tea. Husband, you must be tired. Today is considered peaceful. Field Officer Zhao sighed. Did your sisters come today? Yes, Lu and Xueling from the House of High Dukes. The House of High Dukes. Chief Chu Li's maid. What a powerful background. Why is she here? She is good friends with Lu. Lu is teaching her how to dance. It seems that your backer is really the House of High Dukes. Field Officer Zhao laughed. If you bully me in the future, I will tell Sister Xueling. Hong Xiu pursed her lips and smiled. Let her find Chief Chu Li to help me. How would I dare to bully you? Field Officer Zhao laughed. I want to go to the House of High Dukes tomorrow. Hong Xiu sat beside him. Ling said to help me find High Official Gua from the 100 Herb Courtyard. High Official Gua is a miracle doctor. In my opinion, let's not waste time. After a few years, we can just adopt someone from Big Brother's side. Field Officer Zhao said. We are still young. High Official Gua's medical skills are excellent. Maybe he can cure me. Yu, all right, I will listen to you. The next morning, Hong Xiu could not hold back her impatience. She first went to Lu's house. After meeting up, she went to the house of High Dukes. When Ling saw her coming, she directly invited Elder Gua to the East Garden. Guo Mulan did not refuse because of Chu Li. He came over to take Hong Xiu's pulse. The three women sat in the pagoda, their bright eyes staring at him. Guo Mulan touched his beard and frowned. It's quite troublesome. How about this? Let your master come back and perform the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique on her. That's not a problem, Ling said. Will she be cured after using the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique? She is congenitally weak. Her meridians are weak and her physique is poor. After the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique, she will find a method to nourish her body and mind. Thank you, Elder Gua, Hong Xiu quickly said. Guo Mulan waved his hand and said, You don't have to thank me. Only Chu Li can perform the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique. If you want to thank someone, thank him. Ling said, Then how long will it take for Sister Hong Xiu to recover? After a month of performing the technique and with the help of medicinal pills, there should be no problem, Guo Mulan said. Don't worry. If it wasn't for Chu Li, there is no way to cure your illness. With the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique, it will be a piece of cake. Hong Xiu nodded excitedly. Ling smiled and said, Sister Hong Xiu, don't worry. Master is not back yet. I will inform you once he comes back. Thank you, Sister Ling. What are you thanking me for? Ling smiled and said, Sister Hong Xiu, come often in the future. Let's play together. Okay. Hong Xiu smiled and said. Chapter 227. Young Master. Shui suddenly screamed and fluttered out of the pagoda. Like a breeze sweeping past the treetops, she arrived at the shore and waved her hands vigorously. Chu Li stood on a small boat. He seemed to be moving slowly, but he was approaching them at an incredible speed. Shui jumped forward and hugged his arm. Master, you're finally back. Chu Li could feel the delicate fragrance and softness on his arm. He calmly pulled his arm away. What is it? Sister Hong Xiu's body is weak. Elder Gua has seen her. She helped and said that she needs to use the 9 transformation, eat a few snacks, and change his clothes. She muttered while serving and said, Sister Hong Xiu didn't mind waiting for one more day. I've already promised. Why did she have to do it today? The two of them talked, ignored her as they walked since inside. He wanted to earn a favor. They passed through the forest. The more, the better. Arrived Hong at the gazebo and by Lu came to the small courtyard. Everyone stood up. Now that he had reached the Grandmaster's boundary, it was much easier for Chu Li to use the 9 transformation meridian and nodded at the two ladies with a smile. In the blink of an eye, he then smiled at Hong Xiu's entire body. Elder covered with thorns. It's rare for you to grace the room with her clothes with your presence, motionless like a statue. Only her eyes was dragged here by that girl. All the needles swayed rhythmically, undulating like waves. I don't have the time for this. Lu clicked her tongue. Let's go. In wonder as she watched from the side and said, Chu Li stood up and left. I'll visit you again another day. Lu asked this softly. Little girl's physique is naturally weak. It'll take almost the same as second lady's. That long? She needs the 9 transformation. She was familiar with meridian books, reforming and remembered that needles should not be used for too long. Pointed at Hong Xiu. Otherwise, and he waved his hand. The body. I'm leaving. Don't send me off. This is a meridian reforming. He strode away. How can it be done in such a short time? And shook his head. Li came to the garden to see Liu. Liu was chatting with Ping with an elegant and charming smile. He put down the hoe and glared from the new moon brothel, who was about to put the hoe down. Had seen too many high-ranking officials. Chu Li went to the pagoda with him to drink tea. Her knowledge was outstanding. So she was able to be natural and unrestrained in front of Chu Li. Smart. It would be great if he could be used in the right way. You don't have to be so polished. Let me take a look. Smiled. He sat at the stone table, and Xue Ling served him a cup of tea. That's true. Liu shook his head, arm, and revealing her wrist. I've been too strict with him. The omniscient mirror unconsciously her body. Chu Li's standards to set her meridians were thin, but after thinking about it, and she was naturally weak. And Chu Li were different. So they could not be lumped together. Transformation. Lady Xiao is gone. Meridian, my heart feels empty. Young master, do you want to take a break? I don't have the energy to cast the spell tomorrow. When Lady Xiao was here, she would come to the East Garden from time to time. Pouted. From time to time, she could use the 9 transformation garden. Meridian. He was reforming energy technique, taking care of the East Garden. He had traveled so such a long way. Lady Xiao would be satisfied. He should take a break first. Now that Lady Xiao was gone, win over the hearts no one of the came to the East Garden anymore. Brothel. He didn't have to work so hard to get them to become his body felt lazy and ears. If it wasn't for Ping, he would have slacked off a long time ago. You must have walked for a long time. His melancholy was like a drop of ink falling into his water and slowly spreading. There's no time like the present. When will Lady Xiao be back? Today will do. Maybe a year, maybe 2. Ready. Li got up at the sky and walked out of the pagoda. Maybe 8 to 10 years. Xue Ling quickly followed him. It's hard to live like this. Liu sighed. Chu Li held his teacup and said nothing. Liu said, Chu Li, you'll be leaving in half a year, right? Chu Li nodded. Liu sighed. That's even more boring. If you're here, I can still find someone to talk to. If you're not here, I won't even have someone to talk to. But I have Ping. Chu Li cheered up, dispelling the melancholy and emptiness. He smiled. He's a troublemaker. He's too troublemaker. We're not the same kind of people. Liu scoffed. Chu Li laughed. Brotherly, you're wrong. You're also a troublemaker. You two are the same kind of people. The two chatted and laughed. Their moods relaxed. As the sun set, Hong Xiu returned home with the sunset glow. As soon as she stepped into the courtyard, she was stunned. It was the first time her husband came home so early. He was practicing in the courtyard. Field Officer Zhao's burly body was as agile as an ape. He was agile, and his fists were like hammers. When he saw her coming in, he put away his fists and turned to look at her. High Official Guo, have you seen me? Hong Xiu picked up a towel from the side and passed it to him. Today, Chief Chu Li came back and performed the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique on me. He also gave me a bottle of energy enhancement pills. My body is light and full of energy. 9 transformation meridian reforming technique. Field Officer Zhao frowned and shook his head. Hong Xiu said, according to Xue Ling, this is an amazing technique. It can make people reborn. Tomorrow, I'll learn a set of body and mind cultivation technique. I'll be able to recover and strengthen my body in a month. Field Officer Zhao frowned even tighter. Is it that amazing? High Official Guo said that I'm congenitally weak. The effect of nurturing is minimal. Only the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique can cure me. Hong Xiu smiled. I feel that my body is much better. I walked such a long distance. If it was before, I would have been out of breath. Now I'm not even panting. Field Officer Zhao felt more and more uneasy. How could there be such a magical medical skill? Congenitally weak would require a long period of nurturing before there was any hope of changing. It was against common sense to suddenly become stronger in a day. Field Officer Zhao said, tomorrow I'll go and find out what this 9 transformation meridian reforming technique is. Don't worry. Why would the dignified public house lie to a weak woman like me? Hong Xiu smiled and shook her head. The two entered the living room and sat down. Hong Xiu told them everything in detail. Field Officer Zhao asked about Chu Li's appearance. He was extremely curious about Chu Li. Chu Li could be said to be a legendary figure in Chongming Town. From entering the public house to becoming a rank 2 chief, the speed of his advancement was shocking. From an ordinary person who had never laid a foundation to an innate master, the speed of his advancement was also shocking. Chapter 228. The next day, Hong Xiu went to the House of High Dukes to learn the nurturing technique from Xueling. The 3 of them sat in the gazebo, covered by a white veil. The breeze was gentle, and the white veil fluttered with the wind. When it reached the gazebo, most of it was covered by the veil, and it completely lost its sharpness. Sister Hong Xiu, I have carefully selected this eternal youth technique. It has the fastest effect. Xueling smiled. Sister Lu, you should learn it too. You can teach it to the sisters in the New Moon brothel in the future. Master said that your bodies are not good enough and need the nurturing technique to recuperate. I want to learn too. Lu smiled. I dance all day long, and my body is very good. That's different. Xueling shook her head. Dancing is harmful to the body. You look good, but you are strong in appearance, but weak in reality. When you get older, you will be sick all over and need the nurturing technique even more. Hong Xiu smiled. Lu, just learn it. There is no harm. All right, I will learn. Lu smiled. Xueling explained the heart technique in detail. The nurturing technique was more complicated than the martial arts heart technique. It needed to go through all the meridians in the body, unlike the martial arts heart technique that only attacked 1 or 2 meridians. Hong Xiu learned for a day. When she returned home in the evening, she saw that her husband had returned early again. He was pacing back and forth in the hall with his hands behind his back. As soon as he saw her, Field Officer Zhao immediately came over and said excitedly, My wife, I heard about the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique. How is it? Hong Xiu smiled. She believed in the 9 transformation meridian reforming technique. She knew her body well, and it was indeed a complete transformation. It is a secret technique passed down from ancient times, and it has been lost. Field Officer Zhao said excitedly, This technique can allow ordinary people to build their foundation in 1 step and save more than 10 years of effort. It is really mysterious. So powerful, however, it is extremely dangerous to perform this technique. I am now sweating from the shock. Chief Chu Li is too risky. Come on, he is very relaxed. Hong Xiu smiled. I think he is just treating it as an ordinary technique and is very confident. That is true. Chief Chu Li is indeed extraordinary. Field Officer Zhao sighed. He was very grateful to Chu Li. How could ordinary people be lucky enough to encounter such a secret technique? I have to think of a way to thank him. Hong Xiu muttered. In the end, he shook his head and sighed. I really can't think of anything. He doesn't lack anything. Did you see Chief Chu today? Hong Xiu shook her head. No, he is very busy. He just came back from outside yesterday. I'm travel-worn. The honored one is busy. Field Officer Zhao said, Indeed, we have to thank Chief Chu properly. Ask Miss Xueling about it and cater to her preferences. I've asked around. Chief Chu likes good food and enjoys life. But how would the House of High Dukes lack these? Hong Xiu smiled and said, Forget it. I'll think of something. Colonel Zhao said. Hong Xiu smiled and did not persuade him anymore. Time passed unknowingly. Chu Li was immersed in the formation of the rising Sun Mountain. Ever since he stepped into the Grandmaster's boundary, his understanding of this world had become much clearer. His progress in studying the formation was extremely fast. After reading through the formation books that the High Duke's public house had collected, he had learned something new. There had been no progress on the rising Sun Mountains formation. This formation was strange. If he could understand it, he could set it up directly. With the House of High Duke's protection, it would be much easier. Unfortunately, this formation was too profound. It seemed that he had to go to Tai Hua Valley to take a look at the formation there. In the evening, Schweling pushed the door open and came to the gazebo with a smile. Master, Xiao Taiying wants to see you. Master Xiao Taiying? Chu Li raised his head and looked at her. Schweling said, Master Xiao Taiying's people can't enter the Jade Guardian Island, so they came to the East Garden to find me. I'll go and take a look. Chu Li put down the formation book. He disappeared in a flash and stood on the small boat in the next moment. The small boat floated and soon arrived at Iron Eagle Island. He saw Xiao Taiying in the hall. Xiao Taiying was frowning and thinking. Lin Quan stood behind him motionlessly. Chu Li came in and closed fist saluted. Xiao Taiying got up and beckoned him to sit down and talk. Master Xiao Taiying, the method to enter the formation of the Jade Guardian Island. Don't forget it. Xiao Taiying waved his hand and said, Only you and Schweling know. You don't have to tell me. I'm not going. Chu Li said, Master, what's bothering you? Xiao Taiying sighed. It's the matter of the Y public house. Chu Li said, The wedding is in a month, right? Yes, Xiao Taiying nodded unhappily. Chu Li knew why he was like this. He sighed. Master, don't you want to fight for it? Xiao Taiying smiled bitterly. His face was haggard, as if he had not slept for a few days. As expected, he had been struggling and contradicting himself, unable to make a decision. Chu Li said, Master, are you going to watch them get married? What else can we do? Xiao Taiying sighed. We really can't compare to the Rin public house. No wonder we chose them. Chu Li scoffed. We are weak now, but it doesn't mean we will be weak in the future. The Y public house only looks at the present. Xiao Taiying sighed. Chu Li said, Master, I'm already in the Grand Master's boundary. Yes, Xiao Taiying responded casually. Chapter 229. Chu Li smiled. The last time Xiao Taiying stayed in Huai Public House for a period of time, he fell in love with the eldest lady of Huai Public House at first sight. This was how the world worked. If Chu Li and Xiao Qi had the same temperament, it would be very difficult for them to fall in love at first sight. This was because rationality was more important than emotions. If there was a slight fluctuation in their emotions, they would suppress it and look at it calmly and rationally. No matter what kind of feelings they had, they were all very weak, at the beginning unable to withstand such scrutiny. Xiao Taiying's personality was different from theirs. He was more emotional than rational. He knew that he could not fall in love with Song Yuning and that he was asking for trouble, but he still could not control himself. But, Master, if the bride kidnapping is successful, have you thought of the consequences? Chu Li asked. Xiao Taiying's face turned bitter. He had been hesitating, conflicted, and pained because he was worried about this. If they really snatched the bride of the Rin public house, the two public houses would really become enemies. The hatred of snatching a wife was a great shame and humiliation. The two public houses would definitely go to war. Because of his own personal feelings, he had let the protectors of the House of High Dukes die. He had become a sinner. Chu Li looked at him. This was indeed a dilemma. Love the country or love the beauty, or be loyal to himself and snatch his woman over, be happy with gratitude and revenge, or for the sake of the protectors of the House of High Dukes, watch the woman he likes marry someone else, regret, and suffer for the rest of his life. The former would lead to an all-out war where they would fight to the death, and many guards would die. However, The latter wouldn't shed all pretenses of cordiality. The conflict would be limited to a certain area, and there wouldn't be too many casualties. They would endure the humiliation and increase their strength step by step. Once they were connected to the prince's mansion through marriage, and their strength increased, they would settle the score. Chu Li said, Master Xiao Taiying, once the two families unite by marriage, even if we join the imperial residence of king and through marriage, we won't be able to do anything to them. Sigh. Xiao Taiying sighed. Chu Li said, if the bride kidnapping is successful and Lady Song marries into our public house, what will happen to Huai public house? Will they accept the status quo, or will they turn against us? Xiao Taiying frowned and thought for a moment. In the end, he shook his head. Chu Li said, if we don't want Huai public house to fall out with us, we have to show our strength and let them see the situation clearly. We also have to be neutral. I'm most afraid that Lu Yurong will use her tricks to force Huai public house to go against us. Lu Yurong can do it. Xiao Taiying gritted his teeth and said, I've decided I'll kidnap the bride. Chu Li nodded slowly. It was rare for eldest young master to be so decisive and choose to kidnap the bride. Chu Li said, actually, there's another way. It's not so extreme. Xiao Taiying quickly asked, what is it? Before we get married, grab Miss Song first. Chu Li pondered and said, do it secretly and force Huai public house to postpone the wedding date. With a buffer, they won't become enemies. That's a great idea. Xiao Taiying was overjoyed. Chu Li said, Master, please prepare a letter and a token. I will snatch Miss Song back. Will it work? How many people should we send? I'll be fine by myself. All right, it's all up to you now. Xiao Taiying was very confident in Chu Li. After some thought, he passed his waist tag to Chu Li and asked Ling Quan to serve him with a brush and ink. Then he wrote a few words. He believed that Song Yuning would recognize him as soon as she saw those words. Huai public house, Hal Song Shirling grinned widely and beamed with joy. Sister Lu, why did you come here personally? In front of him stood a graceful woman. Her face was covered by a white veil, revealing a pair of phoenix eyes. Her black eyebrows were full of charm. Anyone who saw her phoenix eyes would be intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves. Song Shirling felt his whole body go limp when he saw her clear eyes. He could not help but smile. I came a step earlier to prevent any troublemakers, Lu Yurong said lightly, to ensure that the wedding can be carried out smoothly. Her voice was gentle and had an inexplicable magnetism. It seemed to flow into people's hearts. They could not help but listen to every word. You're afraid that the people from E Public House will cause trouble, right? Song Shirling laughed. There's no need for that. The last time Xiao Taiying came, I talked to him. He's a man with a magnanimous heart. He won't play tricks. He won't, but others might not, Lu Yurong said. Others? Song Shirling quickly invited her to sit down. He asked doubtfully, who else wants to cause trouble? Jing Public House. E Public House. They don't have the guts. Besides, they're so far away. They don't have that much free time. It's better to be careful, Lu Yurong said lightly. Yes, Sister Lu is thoughtful. It's best to be careful. Song Shirling nodded quickly. Lu Yurong raised her voice. Aunt Xiao. A middle-aged woman fluttered into the hall. She had a graceful figure and looked to be in her 30s. She was beautiful like a ripe peach, full and tempting. Every move she made had a seductive charm. My lady, she stood quietly in front of Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong said, Brother Song, this Aunt Xiao is my personal protector. Before the wedding, she will be protecting Sister Song Shirling to prevent anyone from plotting against her. Song Shirling hesitated. It was obvious that she did not trust the protectors of the public house. The protectors of the public house would definitely be dissatisfied. Lu Yurong said lightly, "It's not that I don't trust the protectors of your public house. I'm adding more people, not replacing them. This is a critical time. I'm sure the protectors of your public house can understand, right?" She narrowed her bright eyes, which were filled with authority. "That's true." Song Shirling agreed and laughed. "With Protector Xiao's personal protection, I'm completely relieved. Sister Song Shirling will soon be my sister-in-law. Would I deliberately harm her?" Lu Yurong said, "Brother Song, please don't misunderstand my good intentions." I won't. Song Shirling quickly waved his hand. Under Lu Yurong's clear eyes, he seemed to have become a young man. He was no longer smart and capable. He had always been reckless and straightforward. He forgot to wear the mask and was at a loss. Lu Yurong said, "I don't know if there are any rooms in Sister Song Shirling's boudoir. Let Aunt Xiao stay next to Sister Song Shirling. It's better for protection." Yes, Song Shirling quickly said. Lu Yurong said, "Thank you, Brother Song. You're welcome." Song Shirling struggled hard to get rid of the one-sided disadvantage. He forced himself to pull himself together and smiled. "Sister Lu, all these precautions are to guard against Chu Li, right?" Lu Yurong's eyes narrowed, and her gaze was cold. Song Shirling felt that he had regained some of his disadvantage. He quickly smiled and said, "Chu Li's light body technique is elusive. We can't guard against him." "I'd like to see his light body technique," Lu Yurong said coldly. Song Shirling said, "This brat is too arrogant. He needs to be taught a lesson." Lu Yurong's eyes glanced at him coldly. "Brother Song Shirling, I'm tired too. I'll take my leave first." "All right, come with me," Song Shirling quickly said. He secretly gave himself a thumbs up. He was smart enough to find her Achilles heel. Song Shirling had carefully investigated Chu Li. He was also clear about the struggle between the two public houses. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.